Chapter 281. The Qingqing District Police Station received a rather ridiculous investigation. A month ago, a man named Ming Chu fell off a cliff and died at the bottom of the mountain. The police found his body and tested his DNA. All the identification information showed that he was Ming Chu. He was 31 years old and used to be a programmer in a company. He had a virtuous and kind wife, Su Rong. They were very loving and had gone through many hardships together. Su Rong's parents died early. Ming Chu's biological parents had many children at home, so they didn't care much about Ming Chu, who didn't listen to their advice and married an ordinary girl, Su Rong. That was not the point. The point was that when the police asked Su Rong to come and claim the body, Su Rong didn't admit that it was her husband. The police thought that she was upset, so they could only ask Ming Chu's family to come and claim the body back to the funeral home. Then Su Rong suddenly disappeared. Because of her sudden disappearance and an accidental fall off a cliff, the police didn't notice anything strange for a long time. Until Ming Chu's family said that they couldn't contact Su Rong, they suspected that Ming Chu's death was not an accident and had something to do with Su Rong. The police didn't think it was possible. After their investigation, they found that Su Rong and Ming Chu were very loving. There was no hostility between them. On the day Ming Chu went to the mountain, Su Rong was in school. However, it was hard to explain Su Rong's sudden disappearance. They spent a few days investigating Su Rong's whereabouts. It turned out that she didn't disappear. She just went back to an old house that her parents left for her in the capital. According to the information, she hadn't been back for more than 10 years. The police came to check as usual, but they didn't expect to find such shocking news. Ming Chu didn't die. They clearly saw that Ming Chu was still alive. But how could it be? At that time, the DNA test showed that the body wasn't unrecognizable. It was exactly the same as Ming Chu's photo. Even Ming Chu's family had claimed it. How could Ming Chu still be alive? They then quickly carried out the investigation and were shocked to find that Su Rong had brought Ming Chu here a month ago. The neighbors all said that the young couple was very loving and would be together wherever they went. Every day, Ming Chu came back from work and cooked for her. Su Rong didn't go to work and only went out to buy vegetables occasionally. Everyone in the neighborhood praised him. Even the women were jealous that Su Rong had found such a good husband. Even if Ming Chu wasn't very outstanding, he couldn't hide the love in his eyes for Su Rong. A person that many people knew to be dead was still alive? The police in Qingqing District also called Ming Chu's family to confirm. Ming Chu's family was even more shocked than them. How is this possible? Are you kidding me? When my son died, I saw it with my own eyes. It was my son. You've already tested the DNA, and the forensic report is out. Now you're telling us that Ming Chu is still alive? Then who did we burn? The police were also at a loss. That's right, who was the one who was burned? If he was careless, could it be that he had mistaken the person who had fallen to his death? This was a huge mistake. It was possible that they did not investigate clearly. This was a rather serious mistake. The police hurriedly restarted the investigation, but for Qiao Jin, this was something that happened within a day or two. Yuan Wan also found out about Ming Chu's death. The moment she saw it, her face turned pale. Chapter 282. She finally knew what was wrong. The lifeline she had been looking at all this time was the lifeline that was wrong. Ming Chu had died long ago. She didn't know what she was looking at. She only had a little divination ability. She didn't expect to encounter such an outrageous thing. Through the lifeline, she could conclude that the real Ming Chu was dead. Then who was this man who looked exactly like Ming Chu? Was he Ming Chu's twin brother? No. According to the information network, Ming Chu was Ming Chu himself. Yuan Wan was suddenly confused. If so, did Su Rong know that the real Ming Chu was dead? According to the information, the police had informed Su Rong that Ming Chu was dead. If Su Rong didn't know, if she didn't know, why did she move? Yuan Wan suddenly thought of something that others didn't expect. She even planned to investigate Su Rong and Ming Chu on the internet that day. This was a very bold decision because at home, she had heard from the older generation that there were actually many unknown things in this world. It was already a blessing from the heavens for them to be able to grasp divination. There were also some people who had unimaginable abilities. Then, did Ming Chu come back from the dead? How did he do it? Su Rong and Ming Chu went to bed very early every night. Yuan knew that it was wrong for her to sneak in. She even stole the key to their house to investigate. God knew why she, a master of divination, would do such a thing. It was probably because she was too curious. She couldn't help it. She quietly opened the door. The house was very quiet. Fortunately, the bedroom door wasn't closed. She first looked around the living room quietly, but she didn't find any traces. Standing at the door, through the dim moonlight outside, she saw that there was only Su Rong lying on the small bed. Where was Ming Chu? Yuan suddenly sweated. If there was only Su Rong lying on the bed, didn't that mean that Ming Chu didn't sleep? She suddenly thought of something terrible. Her hair stood on end and she looked around. The room was cold and cheerless. There was no movement. She trembled as she prepared to leave. Who knew that a slight noise would wake Su Rong up? Who is it? She turned over and sat up. She was wearing white pajamas. She turned on the table lamp and saw Yuan at the bedroom door. She was shocked. Master, what are you doing here? She frowned. Did you sneak in? Yuan didn't know how she could remain rational at this moment. She couldn't even maintain the demeanor of a master. She just asked, Where is Ming Chu? Her words seemed to have reminded Su Rong of something. She turned her head and saw a scene that she would never forget. Next to Su Rong, a figure gradually turned from transparent to solid. It was like a scene from a movie. It was like a fantasy. The person who appeared was Ming Chu. He seemed to be lying on the bed. He opened his eyes and looked like he had just woken up. He rubbed his eyes and sat up. Rong, what's wrong? Su Rong immediately revealed a gentle smile. Did I wake you up? She leaned over and allowed Ming Chu to embrace her, as if she didn't realize how Ming Chu had appeared just now. A scream was stuck in her throat. Yuan was almost scared out of her wits. An inexplicable force blocked her mouth, preventing her from screaming. Then, a gust of wind blew and swept Yuan away. The door of the bedroom slowly closed. Chapter 283. Yuan was dragged to the staircase. With a click, the door that she had secretly opened closed automatically. She stood at the staircase, facing the dim yellow light, still in shock. Cold sweat dripped down her forehead. Xiao Jin stood upstairs with a faint smile. What did you see? The sudden voice made Yuan shiver again. She ran down the stairs subconsciously, but when she looked up, she saw Xiao Jin. You? Yuan was still in shock and didn't know how to describe the situation in front of her. She seemed to have been swept out by an inexplicable force just now. She was probably crazy. What she saw tonight was even more ridiculous than her divination. Su Rong, Ming Chu. She trembled and didn't know what nonsense she was talking about. Xiao Jin chuckled. You dare to barge in without any ability. You're really brave. You should be glad that she didn't hurt anyone. Yuan's pupils shrank. She looked at Xiao Jin. Who are you? Xiao Jin, you don't need to know who I am. Go back. Don't tell anyone about what happened today. Yuan almost screamed, but she restrained herself and only said in a panic, Do you know what she is? What? Xiao Jin raised his eyebrows slightly. You use such words to describe your customer? Yuan's face suddenly turned pale. I've never seen such. There are many things you haven't seen. Xiao Jin laughed. You can predict that she has some problems. You're quite capable, but unfortunately, that's all you have. If Yuan was said like this in normal times, she would have refuted in anger. But now, her face kept changing between green and red, and she couldn't say a word. She calmed her breathing and said after a while, Are you in the same profession? Xiao Jin, I'm not in the same profession. Leave. I said, don't tell anyone about what happened today. You can't do anything about it. Yuan was scared. But won't they hurt others? She's been here for a month. Who have you seen her hurt? Xiao Jin glanced at Yuan. If you say a few more words, you won't be leaving today. Yuan was so frightened that she ran away in a panic. Although she did not know who Xiao Jin was, his words made her realize that she had come into contact with an existence that was not to be trifled with. The ancestor was right. There were things in this world that she couldn't understand. Now, it was already good enough that she could keep her life. After she left in a panic, Xiao Jin pinched his chin. As soon as she saw Yuan Wan, she knew that she was going to ruin things. So he found an excuse to sleep here tonight. Yuan Wan saw the truth. Ming Chu was no longer Ming Chu, but what was he now? This was an existence that even Xiao Jin found inconceivable, and it was also her first time seeing it. It wasn't dangerous. Instead, it was rather shocking. She was so surprised that even she hesitated. She returned to her room. There were still a few days left, so there was no hurry. Yuan Wan, who was downstairs, left the neighborhood. She was almost crawling and rolling. For the time being, she didn't know who Su Rong and Ming Chu were, but she definitely didn't dare to come. And that girl? Who was that girl? What did she know? Was she the one who made the gust of wind that swept her out? She left the place in a panic. In the night, there were also figures shuttling back and forth between the roofs. Chapter 284. The next day, Xiao Jin asked for a leave of absence from school. She saw Su Rong going out with Ming Chu as usual. Because the police had been visiting and investigating these days, people looked at them strangely. But they didn't find anything, and a neighbor reminded Su Rong. Su Rong just smiled and didn't take it seriously. She held Ming Chu's hand and walked down the street. Not far away, an old couple happened to be looking at them. Their eyes were full of horror. They looked at Su Rong and Ming Chu in disbelief. In broad daylight, they trembled as if they had seen ghosts. The old woman seemed to be unable to bear the shock. She rolled her eyes and fainted. Next to them, there were two hidden police officers. That's Ming Chu. That's Ming Chu. After waking up, the old woman cried and explained to the police officers, But I saw my son's body being burned with my own eyes. How could he still be alive? How could he still be alive? The police officers also felt that this matter was unimaginable. At this time, they received an order. This matter was handed over to a special organization. There was no need for the police to investigate further. Although they didn't know what the special organization was, they still followed the order and retreated. Later, a few men and women in coats came to the hospital. They looked very cool. Granny, we have something to do now. Please come with us to Su Rong's house to investigate Ming Chu, okay? Hiao asked politely. They actually didn't understand why such a matter was handed over to them. Based on the information, they felt that the most likely possibility was that the police didn't investigate clearly and the person who was burned to death might be another tourist who had lost his footing. Ming Chu didn't die. But later, when they looked at the information carefully, they found that many things were wrong. However, this matter was strange from the beginning to the end. They could only deal with this matter to see if Ming Chu was a spiritual psyche master. The newly brought little spiritual psyche master was also brought back by them. She looked at all this curiously. She was wearing new clothes and biting a piece of bread. Her hair was braided, and she was held by the tallest Chow Kai. The old couple was actually a little scared because they saw their son's body being burned with their own eyes. They really didn't know what this Ming Chu, who was still alive, was. The older generation had a strong idea that he might be a strange existence. They carefully followed He Yao's group to Su Rong's house. In the end, he saw Xiao Jin. He Yao's heart skipped a beat when she saw Xiao Jin here. Yishuadai didn't come to class today. Chow Kai and Hua Yinming, who were behind her, saw her. They looked at each other and realized that she was probably a spiritual reader. Otherwise, Xiao Jin would not have appeared here. However, Xiao Jin's appearance here meant that he might be a demonized spiritualist. What made He Yao stiffen was that the people who were monitoring the spirit group clearly said that Xiao Jin was at home. He was at home. How did they do that? Since Xiao Jin had chosen to show himself, he had no intention of hiding from He Yao. When He Yao saw Xiao Jin, she went up to him and asked, Xiao Jin, why are you here? Xiao Jin smiled. I bought a house here. I live here. He Yao. The spirit group was useless. For so long, their reports were that Xiao Jin was at home. In the end, he had bought a house here, but they were still at home. Chapter 285. Although they knew that they couldn't monitor Xiao Jin, they were still shocked that he was so weak. Obviously, his previous whereabouts, they couldn't be taken seriously. He Yao didn't know how Xiao Jin did it, but she knew that he had done it. She stood there, and He Yao even sent a message to the spirit group to ask for Qiao Jin's address. Spies. He's still at home. I heard that he took a day off and didn't go to school. He probably caught a cold. He Yao. You guys are really a bunch of little geniuses. Even Yu Xie, who didn't like Qiao Jin, twitched his mouth when he saw the replies in the group. He looked at Qiao Jin and didn't know what to say. Seeing He Yao with the old couple, Qiao Jin chuckled. I didn't expect you guys to handle this. Is there no one else in the spirit group? He Yao's face stiffened. We just came back. The other groups have other things to do. There were so many strange situations that the spirit group couldn't handle it all. Since He Yao's group came back, the spirit group transferred this matter to them. Qiao Jin glanced at the old couple. He Yao asked them to take the old couple upstairs to check on the situation. She then chatted with Qiao Jin for a while. The little girl in Qiao Kai's arms looked at Qiao Jin curiously before they left. After they left, Qiao Jin asked, Is the little girl yours? He Yao nodded. I have to thank you for this. Qiao Jin, you don't have to thank me. Train her well. She's a good seedling. He Yao felt that the little girl was honored to be praised as a good seedling. She thought for a moment and said, Her surname is Lan. The people in her family want to save trouble, so we changed the name of her orchid. She is now called Lan Xiaoni. Qiao Jin, I don't think this name is better than Lan Xiaoni. He Yao blushed. I think it's better than Lan Xiaoni. Qiao Jin glanced at her. You gave her the name? He Yao, she was almost 30 years old. She didn't expect to feel embarrassed in front of a little girl like Qiao Jin. It was too embarrassing. Qiao Jin smiled. He Yao's face turned even redder. She could only change the topic. What's the situation? Resurrected from the dead, a demonized spiritual reader? Qiao Jin paused and then said softly, It's not a resurrection from the dead, nor is it a demonized spiritual reader. I don't want you to interfere in this matter. He Yao was stunned. A spiritual reader? Qiao Jin said, sort of, but not entirely. Her ability is useless against you. She didn't point out who was the real spiritual reader between Su Rong and Ming Chu. He Yao didn't understand. Since Qiao Jin didn't want them to interfere in this matter, she would do as she was told. As long as he was sure that Su Rong and Ming Chu would be fine, he wouldn't care. Just like other spiritual readers, he just needed to monitor them. However, she was still curious about how Lan Xiaoni did it. Everyone knew that Ming Chu was dead. If Ming Chu wasn't dead, who was the one who was cremated? He Yao couldn't stay downstairs for too long. She went upstairs first and saw the tense atmosphere in the room. Who did you say died? Who died? Ming Chu is standing here. He's not dead. Compared to Su Rong's usual happiness and gentleness, Lan Xiaoni seemed to have been angered. Chapter 286. As she got angry, even Ming Chu looked at this group of people with hostility. Ming Chu's parents were shocked. Now that they looked at Ming Chu up close, they realized how scary it was. Ming Chu was still alive. He was really still alive. This was their Ming Chu. His appearance and temperament were exactly the same as before. Even the ecology and the slightest movements were like that. They couldn't believe it. Ming Chu's mother cried, Son, I'm your mother. Ming Chu was a little angry. Of course I know you're my mother. But why did you come to disturb me and Rong Rong? Ming Chu's mother was shocked. Disturb you? Ming Chu continued, I'm living happily with Rong Rong now. You came to my house and said I was dead. Are you kidding me? If I were dead, would I still be standing here? Indeed, the people from the spirit team looked at him as if he was alive. Did the police make a mistake? Ming Chu's father seemed to realize that his son was still alive. He was a little angry. If you're still alive, why didn't you call home? Why did you let your wife mess around and leave home with her for so long? You've grown up, haven't you? Ming Chu replied coldly, If I didn't leave, what would you say about her? You didn't like her in the past. I wanted to live with Rong Rong in a place where no one would disturb us. Is that wrong? Ming Chu's father was furious. This was obviously a spiritual psyche master incident. However, Yu Xie and the others couldn't see anything wrong with Ming Chu and Su Rong. They even used a detector to check, but there was no reaction. Then why did Qiao Jin appear here? At this moment, Lan Xiaoni, who had finished eating bread, was being held by Qiao Kai. She suddenly reached out as if she wanted to touch Ming Chu. Su Rong's expression changed, and she pulled Ming Chu away. Ming Chu took 2 steps back. Naturally, Lan Xiaoni didn't touch him. Her expression was a little confused. This scene didn't escape the other's eyes. Yu Xie narrowed his eyes. Why don't you dare to let Xiaoni touch him? Lan Xiaoni had spatial abilities. Was there something wrong with Ming Chu? Su Rong reacted quickly. Don't touch my husband. This child is still young. If he gets hurt, I can't bear the consequences. Yu Xie and the others knew that this was not the reason. At this moment, He Yao stepped forward and said, "Forget it." She looked at Ming Chu and Su Rong and said, "We're sorry for disturbing you. We'll leave now, but can your parents stay here?" She then winked at the members of the spirit group. Chow Kai and the others knew that He Yao had made up her mind. Just as they were about to retreat, Ming Chu's father flung his sleeves furiously. "Humph, if you don't like us here, we won't stay here either." When your mother received the news of your death, she cried and went to the hospital several times. You unfilial son. You actually hid here and lied to your parents with your wife who doesn't know how to care for her in-laws. After saying that, he pulled his wife away. Hearing this, Ming Chu didn't react, but a trace of pain flashed through Su Rong's eyes. He Yao noticed this, but she didn't say anything. She only told the members of the spirit group to leave as soon as possible. Don't disturb them. With a bang, the door slammed shut. Su Rong fell to the ground and tears gushed out. Ming Chu lowered his head and looked at her. His eyes were calm at the moment. Chapter 287. When they went downstairs, Yu Xie couldn't help but complain. Did the spirit group make a mistake? She didn't have the aura of a spiritual reader. Hua Yiming said, "Something is wrong. She doesn't dare to let Xiaoni touch him." He Yao said, "Maybe she just doesn't want anyone to touch her husband. She even lied to her in-laws, let alone strangers." Chow Kai let out a long sigh. Xiao Jin was gone. He Yao took them away. Although they didn't find anything wrong, they still had to observe for a while. They also had to monitor Xiao Jin. Yu Xie angrily sent a message in the group. Team 3 Yu Xie, you want to monitor him? Do you know where Xiao Jin is now? Monitoring team. Is he not at home? Team 3 Yu Xie. He ran to Qingqing district and you still say he's at home? I don't know what your eyes are like. Monitoring team. Monitoring team. I can clearly see that he's at home. Team leader. Team for Yu Xie. Ha ha ha. So ridiculous? Team 7 I play Yasuo. Is the monitoring team so weak now? How could they make such a big mistake? These few words disturbed the spirit group. Those monitoring Xiao Jin would probably start to doubt their lives. Xiao Jin went upstairs after they left. She gave it a gentle push and the door opened. Inside the room, Su Rong was squatting on the ground, crying in despair. She said over and over again, "No, really? He's still alive. Ming Chu is still alive. Ah, he's clearly by my side." Her cries were heart-wrenching and filled with despair. Ming Chu just stood there and looked at Su Rong calmly. It was different from Xiao Jin's calmness. It was a kind of calmness that didn't have any desires. It was as if he didn't have any human emotions. If he didn't move, he would look like a puppet. When Su Rong looked up with tears in her eyes, Ming Chu's heart ached. He lowered his head and hugged Su Rong. Rong, don't cry. I'm right by your side. I'm really by your side," over and over again. He repeated it tirelessly. Xiao Jin pulled a piece of paper from the table, squatted down, and handed it to Su Rong. Su Rong did not respond for a long time. She cried for a long time, so long that the sky outside turned dark. Ming Chu kept hugging her and repeating those words. His voice was not hoarse, and his tone was still the same, as if he really felt sorry for Su Rong. Neither of them seemed to have noticed that Xiao Jin was at home. After a while, Su Rong finally raised her head slowly and looked at Xiao Jin with a hollow look in her eyes when she was almost burping from crying. Xiao Jin sat by the stool. Seeing that she had stopped crying, he took out a tissue and handed it to her. Su Rong took it and said in a hoarse voice, "Thank you." Ming Chu also said, "Thank you." Xiao Jin said, "You're welcome." Su Rong wiped her tears and stood up with red eyes. She smiled at Xiao Jin and said, "I've let you see a joke. It's just that they went too far. How could they come to my door and say that Ming Chu is dead?" Ming Chu is clearly by my side. After saying that, she tilted her head slightly. Ming Chu pulled her into his arms, and she smiled in relief and happiness. Xiao Jin just looked at this scene indifferently. When Su Rong's emotions had completely calmed down, he said softly, "You always knew, didn't you? You always knew that he was fake. Maintaining his existence consumed a lot of your energy. You were getting weaker and weaker. You felt it too." Chapter 288. Su Rong's smile gradually disappeared. She said, "I don't know what you're talking about." Xiao Jin stood up. "You know." She stood up and told Su Rong about the past without hesitation. "In 10,000 years, you're the only one I've seen who can gather the spirits of the dead and make them real. You're also a wizard. Your ability is to bring your husband back." Su Rong's face was wooden, as if she didn't know what Xiao Jin was talking about. Xiao Jin turned around and looked at everything in the room. "Actually, you already knew that he was dead. When you received the news, you were in despair and collapsed. He was your only hope. When he died, you didn't want to live anymore. You were really in love. Everything was like what you remembered. You were very happy, I know. So when you saw him appear again, you were overjoyed. You thought it was a miracle, but you know that he's still fake. You can let him see people, but you can't let him become real. When you sleep, he will disappear, and no one will hug you to sleep. But when you wake up, he will reappear in your heart. You're just desperate, not stupid. A drowning person will grasp at the last straw, so you don't want all of this to disappear. But everything is fair. You'll lose everything if you get it. You can't hold on any longer. Your body is getting weaker and weaker. You can't maintain the energy he needs to exist. You know that." After saying all this, she turned to look at Su Rong again. Her face was pale. Just as Xiao Jin said, she couldn't hold on any longer. The death aura in her eyes was increasing bit by bit. Xiao Jin looked at her and reached out to her. "I'm very surprised by you. You've done something that almost no one can do. As long as you want to live, I can save you. It's not too late." Su Rong stared at Xiao Jin's outstretched hand. The young girl's palm was so white, her face so exquisite and ethereal. Her temperament was like the savior of the world. She really was like a compassionate god. As long as he reached out to her, he would be saved. Su Rong looked at her outstretched hand and suddenly laughed. That laughter was very soft and did not have any meaning behind it. It was just that he found it funny. She said, "Have you never been in love before? Or perhaps you have never enjoyed the taste of love?" Xiao Jin retracted his hand and narrowed his eyes. "I don't really need that kind of thing." Su Rong leaned into Ming Chu's arms and smiled faintly at her. Her entire body was radiating with happiness. "You're very beautiful and very elegant. I know you're not an ordinary person." She knew it the first time they met. She did not refuse. She saw that Xiao Jin's body was emitting an intense light. A person with darkness in his heart would never let others see light in him. Su Rong said quietly, "If you are willing, there will be a lot of people who will fall in love with you, and there will be countless people who will pursue you. But if you are not willing, no one can let you enjoy that feeling. A person's life is so short. You don't even know if there will be a next life. Even if there is, perhaps you will become another person and have no memories. Such a short life. Naturally, you have to pursue something meaningful. Love is something that many people pursue, but they may not get it in their lifetime. You don't understand how difficult it is to have someone you love and someone who truly loves you." Chapter 289. Su Rong and Ming Chu met during their university days. At that time, Su Rong's parents had passed away early, and she was just an ordinary girl. Ming Chu was her senior, and they met through a volunteer program. At that time, Ming Chu was still very outstanding. He could have been admitted to a better school and carried out his brilliant life as a postgraduate and doctoral student, but he gave up all of this for Su Rong. At that time, Su Rong couldn't believe all of this. Since she was young, she didn't have the guidance of her parents. She experienced a lot of the fickleness of human nature, and most of the time, she was looked down upon. She was very poor, so poor that she couldn't even afford a basic cell phone. Being with Ming Chu was the happiest time of her life. They graduated one after another. For Su Rong, Ming Chu gave up his postgraduate studies and started working early because his parents didn't agree to him and Su Rong being together. In order to support Su Rong and himself, he needed to enter society earlier. At that time, they were very bitter. They were like countless duckweeds wandering in the world. Perhaps their lives weren't so smooth, but they lived more happily than anyone else. Every day when they returned home, Ming Chu would prepare dinner. Countless nights, he would gently pull Su Rong into his arms and hug her to sleep. That was the warmest moment of her life. Their happy life didn't last long. Ming Chu was tricked by his parents. They didn't let them meet. They struggled and despaired, but they didn't start any other love. Some people, once they were set on someone, would stay with them forever. Su Rong knew that Ming Chu was her sky. They struggled for a few years. It wasn't until they were almost 30 that Ming Chu's parents finally gave in. They finally got married and had their own little family. Su Rong thought that her happy days had arrived. Although she and Ming Chu had experienced many years of ups and downs, they had also achieved a positive outcome. What was rare was that they didn't smooth out their edges and corners. Their love for each other was still passionate and gentle. Perhaps you won't understand what it feels like to want to be with the person you love the most all the time. I love him, and he loves me. We wish that we couldn't be apart at all times. My biggest regret is that we didn't have the crystallization of our love, or that we didn't have the time. Su Rong's tone was indifferent. She seemed to have cried enough. At this moment, she was smiling as she said these words. It wasn't the kind of smile that was deliberately faked, but a genuine smile of happiness. Then the nightmare came. Ming Chu liked to climb mountains, but Su Rong did not allow such a dangerous hobby after they got married. That day, Su Rong was in class. It was rare for him to have a day off, so he persuaded Su Rong. This mountain was not steep, and many people went there. It was just a natural weekend off. Su Rong even wanted to accompany him again the next day. Who would have thought that fate would be so heinous? He slipped and fell off the cliff. When Su Rong received the news, she almost fainted. During that time, she was absent-minded. She didn't eat or sleep. She didn't know what she was doing in life. The days without Ming Chu were terrifyingly cold. She was filled with regret and despair. She felt that there was no reason for her to continue living. She thought that she might have heard wrongly. Ming Chu was still alive. He would come back. He would definitely come back. Later, when she opened the door, she saw Ming Chu standing outside with a gentle smile. "Rong Rong, are you awake?" It was so real, as if all hope for life had been born in an instant. Chapter 290. After saying this, she closed her eyes. I know it's fake, but what does it matter? He really did come back. As long as she had Ming Chu with her in her last days, he was still by her side, just like in her memory. He would still call her Rong Rong. She could feel the changes in her body. She had no regrets. Compared to others, she was so lucky to be able to spend her last days with the person she loved the most. Xiao Jin looked at the smile on her face. An indescribable emotion flashed through her heart. She only asked, "Isn't it good to be alive?" Su Rong said, "You will know that there is no meaning in living without him." Her life had been extremely difficult. She had no parents, no money, and no ability. Her life was the portrayal of thousands of ordinary people. Many people spent their entire lives like this. She was so lucky to be able to receive Ming Chu's love. She didn't dare to ask for more, but she wasn't willing to give up. Xiao Jin looked at her and fell silent. She didn't know what to say. After a while, she said, "If you are alive, maybe you can meet someone else." Su Rong only looked at her and smiled. "You don't understand. Xiao Jin, no one else will be like him." Xiao Jin glanced at Ming Chu. His gaze was very gentle. It was a gentleness that only looked at her. He only looked at Su Rong. That was how Su Rong remembered him. Because the Ming Chu in her memory was such a person, the Ming Chu who had returned now was such a person. Xiao Jin seemed to understand a little. Su Rong still smiled and asked her, "How much longer do I have?" Xiao Jin hesitated. "There's still half a month." When she couldn't maintain her power, Su Rong and Ming Chu would disappear together. Su Rong said, "That's enough." She didn't have any extravagant hopes in her life. In the last half a month, she could travel the country with Ming Chu. Xiao Jin knew that she couldn't persuade her. She was just suddenly being kind. It was probably because of something. When she walked out of the entrance of the neighborhood, it suddenly started drizzling in the usually warm imperial capital. She went back upstairs, only to find that she hadn't bought an umbrella. Although he wouldn't be drenched by the rain when he walked out, but it might scare others. When she went downstairs, Su Rong's door opened. She handed him a pure white, modern oil paper umbrella embroidered with flying cranes. It was very beautiful. She had a blissful and gentle smile on her face. Ming Chu bought this for me when he was traveling. I might not need it anymore, so I'll give it to you. Xiao Jin would never accept someone's kindness for no reason. However, at this moment, she hesitated for a moment before finally accepting the umbrella. She said, "Thank you." Su Rong said, "You're welcome." Ming Chu's voice came from inside the door. She turned around and responded. That was something from her memory, so Ming Chu would do it according to her memory. All of this was clearly fake to Xiao Jin, but to Su Rong, it was real. She walked down the stairs and slowly opened the umbrella. On the surface of the umbrella, a painting of flying cranes unfolded. Under a few flying cranes, Su Rong and Ming Chu's names were embroidered on the edge of the umbrella. As she walked, it swayed, but it was still incomparably clear. She held the umbrella and walked in the rain, like a fairy walking from the horizon, beautiful but aloof, with a coldness that made people not dare to approach. Chapter 291. When Xiao Jin walked to the entrance of the neighborhood, she saw a car parked by the roadside. She walked over and the car door opened. The rain poured in with the wind and wet the car door in an instant. She quickly closed the umbrella and the rainwater dissipated along the surface of the umbrella. When she sat in the car, the seat was not wet. Xiao Jin said, "Why are you here?" Song Yanqing looked at the umbrella in her hand and showed a hint of curiosity. "You bought it?" It was rare to see such beautiful oil paper umbrellas in the city. When she put it away, it was a long section between them. Xiao Jin placed it neatly on her lap. She looked at him first. "A friend gave it to me. You haven't answered me yet?" Song Yanqing retracted his gaze and looked at her again. "The weather forecast said it would rain today. I know you stayed here last night, so I came over to settle some things. I also wanted to see if you had left." He paused for a moment and continued, "Okay, I'll bring you back." His voice was like the most pleasant sound of a string. Every word fell on the tip of one's heart and shook it. Atong couldn't help but take a look from the rearview mirror. Was young Master Solo from the mother's womb? He didn't dare to believe it. If it were another woman, she would have fallen under his suit pants. Xiao Jin didn't have any special reaction when he heard it. These two were indeed immortals. Immortals wouldn't be easily moved by mortals. "You came at the right time." Xiao Jin looked at the rain outside the window. "It's just like this when it rains." Song Yanqing chuckled. "So have you settled your matters here?" Xiao Jin. Almost. She thought of what she heard from Su Rong and asked him, "In this life, isn't living the most important thing?" Song Yanqing frowned. "Huh. Xiao Jin. Why would there be people who don't want to live because of another person's death?" She had encountered something that she couldn't understand. Song Yanqing instantly understood what had happened. He said softly, "I haven't seen it, but I understand that everyone has different thoughts. Some people's existence could not be replaced by others. Once they disappeared, they would completely lose their sense of direction and would no longer have the motivation to live. Perhaps to that person, the dead person is her motivation to live on." Xiao Jin nodded thoughtfully. She lowered her head and looked at the umbrella on her lap. It was very beautiful. Ming Chu had probably paid a hefty price to buy this umbrella for Su Rong. This was not something that could be produced by an assembly line. Xiao Jin didn't understand why Su Rong had given it to him. Perhaps it was because she felt that she wouldn't be able to take it away after she died. Song Yanqing sensed that Xiao Jin was more depressed than usual. Perhaps this was not how she should be feeling, but he increasingly felt that this Xiao Jin was real enough. In the past, there was always a layer of fog that made it hard for others to see through. She stood at a high position and saw through too many things. In fact, she would not understand the brilliance of this ordinary world. The car drove silently in the direction of the Mu family. In the car, Xiao Jin suddenly said, why don't you come to my house for dinner tonight? I'll tell Fei to ask the kitchen to cook your favorite food. What do you like to eat? Song Yanqing was a little surprised by Qiao Jin's sudden invitation. Because Qiao Jin had sent him home so many times, he had never mentioned it. He didn't care about this and had decided to visit when the time was right. But now that Qiao Jin had mentioned it, he would definitely not refuse. So he replied, okay. Chapter 292. Adan felt that his young master had probably turned over a new leaf. Miss Qiao had already taken the initiative to invite him home for dinner. Could other matters be far away? Could it be that his young master was finally liberated after being single for decades? Where was his love? Before going home, Qiao Jin naturally called Xiao Fei first. Xiao Fei almost fainted when he received the news that Song Yanqing was coming home for dinner. Song, Lord Song is coming? Xiao Fei was shocked and felt that it was a little sudden. He hadn't come to visit before, but now he was coming. He hurriedly ordered the kitchen to prepare Song Yanqing's favorite dishes. In order not to offend Xiao Jin, he ordered a few dishes that he would eat. Xiao Fei, of course, ordered the kitchen to hurry up and make sure that Lord Song was satisfied. Although the Mu family's chefs had always been 5-star, he didn't know how they compared to the Song family. Song Yanqing was coming, so Mu Zhenming rushed home to give him face. Even Mu Xiangshan, who had gone fishing outside, came back. He happened to bump into Mu Zhenming. Seeing that he only came back now, Mu Xiangshan snorted coldly. You're working until so late every day. You don't even care about your own health when you're suffering from myocardial strain. I think I'll have to send you off sooner or later. Mu Xiangshan's words were vicious. Mu Zhenming also snorted coldly. You have high blood pressure, yet you still stay up late and wake up early every day. I think you're quite healthy, and there's nothing wrong with you. I can still send you off alive. Mu Xiangshan, unfilial son. Song Yanqing was coming home for dinner. Muzillion, who had planned to go to the disco, was also summoned back. If he didn't come back, his leg would be broken. When he came back, he expressed his shock. Brother Yanqing is coming. How good is his relationship with Qiao Jin? Xiao Fei declared, isn't it normal for friends to visit each other? Muzillion, only you would believe that. Xiao Fei snorted. Muzillion couldn't help but sigh. The most powerful person in our family is still Qiao Jin. Look at him. Not only is he fine after provoking Ji Sikai, he even has such a good relationship with Brother Yanqing. It's because he's good-looking that he can do whatever he wants. Muzichu. If you're not convinced, you can also change your personality. Muzillion. Are you even human? Muzillion glared at Mu Zhenming. What nonsense are you talking about? Xiao Jin and Guanqing have a normal relationship. What did you say about her provoking Ji Sikai again? Mu Zhenming knew about Ji Sikai. Muzillion didn't tell his family about his return that day, so he told them about it. Mu Zhenming frowned. Forget it. Ji Sikai didn't pursue the matter back then. He won't pursue it behind our backs. Mu Xiangshan snorted coldly. If he can let it slide, he must have taken a liking to your daughter's beauty. Everyone. Muzillion was dumbfounded. That can't be. What kind of beauty hasn't Brother Sikai seen before? That was the first time he met Xiao Jin that day. Although Mu Xiangshan was uncomfortable with Xiao Jin, he still narrowed his eyes and said, You found someone like Xiao Jin? She wasn't extremely beautiful, but with that aura, she was really invincible. They had seen her change and were used to it. Moreover, they were all family and didn't have any messy thoughts. It was different for outsiders. Xiao Fei was also a little worried. Jean is indeed becoming more and more beautiful. I'm just afraid that she'll meet a bad guy. Muzillion. I have a feeling that Xiao Jin is more of a bad guy. Everyone. Chapter 293. At 7:30 p.m., Xiao Jin and Song Yanqing finally arrived. Because of her delay, Song Yanqing might not be able to sleep on time tonight. But it didn't matter. When Song Yanqing appeared in the Mu family mansion, Muzillion even felt that he had found a suitable candidate for the style of his glass room. When he walked in, he was just like Xiao Jin. It was as if he was embracing the wind and the moon, and his whole body was cold. He was tall and slender. When he walked in with Xiao Jin, everyone felt that they were a match made in heaven. Even the innocent Xiao Fei felt that something was wrong when she saw the two of them. Song Yanqing walked in, as gentle as jade. He first greeted, Grandpa Mu, Uncle Mu, Auntie Mu. Hello. Then, he looked at his two younger brothers and smiled. Chi-Chu, Qilian, hello. Hey, 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 Brother Yanqing, hello, Brother Yanqing. Muzilian was the first to stand up like a lackey. He couldn't stand Song Yanqing being so polite, and hurried over to join in the conversation. Xiao Jin looked at him strangely and whispered, You look like the little eunuch on TV that Fei watches. Muzilian. He turned to look at Xiao Jin. Are you going to break off our sibling relationship here? Song Yanqing almost laughed out loud. When he walked over, Mu Zhiming politely invited him to sit down. Mu Xiangshan was an elder and didn't think much of it. He looked at Song Yanqing with a pleasant expression and said with some emotion, Xiao Jin is lucky to have a friend like you. Xiao Jin. Song Yanqing chuckled. Grandpa Mu, you're wrong. It's my fortune to be friends with Xiao Jin. Mu Xiangshan. If you're forced, blink. Mu Zhiming frowned. Dad. Xiao Jin was already used to it. She walked over to Song Yanqing and sat down naturally. The kitchen began to serve the dishes. Xiao Fei said enthusiastically, We made a few dishes that you like. Try them. Song Yanqing smiled and said, Thank you. It was his first time visiting, but he didn't feel uncomfortable at all. It was very natural, and it made people feel relieved. After all, he was the young master of the Song family. She was afraid that he would not be easy to get along with. However, just like the rumors said, he looked like a gentle person. It was just, there was an inexplicable similarity between him and Xiao Jin. Could it be that the two of them had been together for a long time? Mu Xiangshan asked a few questions about the Song family, and Song Yanqing answered them one by one. At the dinner table, Mu Zhiming could also discuss some business matters with him. Xiao Jin realized that he didn't quite understand, so he wasn't willing to listen. She had never been interested in such things. When they were eating, he texted her again, asking about Su Rong and Ming Chu. Xiao Jin only left a message, Don't disturb me. It was enough that he understood. Su Rong and Ming Chu only had a dozen days left. There was no need to do anything else. This was her choice. When Xiao Jin looked at the time, she suddenly heard Xiao Fei's voice. Jin, there are guests here. Why do you keep looking at your phone? You can play with your phone after dinner. She looked up and saw Xiao Fei winking at her. At least Song Yanqing was here now. She couldn't be so rude. Xiao Jin paused and put her phone aside. Song Yanqing immediately smiled and said, It's okay. She doesn't understand what we're talking about. It's natural that she doesn't like to listen. This explanation made Xiao Fei think that Song Yanqing was Xiao Jin's family. Chapter 294. Muzilian couldn't help but feel melancholy at the situation. Someone who had a powerful backer was indeed different. He even treated her differently. Now, it was obvious that whoever offended Xiao Jin would have to think twice. The person behind him wasn't an ordinary person. After the meal, the first visit to the Mu family came to an end. No matter how warm and polite they were too embarrassed to ask Song Yanqing to stay and rest. Mu Zhiming and Xiao Fei sent him to the door, but Xiao Jin didn't send him off. She only stood by the window and watched Song Yanqing leave. When she got into the car, she saw Song Yanqing raise his head. When he saw her standing by the window, a gentle smile appeared on his face. This smile really gave people the feeling of flowers blooming in spring. Xiao Jin paused for a moment, as if he had bumped into the softest part of his heart. He then realized what had happened. He looked really good when he smiled. His fate had been swapped, and he didn't have a happy life. Even with all these things, he still had the most gentle smile. How nice. She turned around and saw that the world was still as noisy as ever. Even Master Yao Zhu's fans were still shouting at her on Weibo. Xiao Jin smiled and sent a private message to Master Yao Zhu. Speak less and you can live for 2 more days. In just a moment, Master Yao Zhu directly deleted the provocative Weibo post and quickly posted a new one. Master Yao Zhu. It's my fault for measuring the heart of a gentleman with my own yardstick. I shouldn't have slandered a real master. I'm very sorry for you to come today. You're a real master and have the ability to forgive others. This sentence almost made Yuan Wan's hair stand on end. Wasn't this what Xiao Jin said at Su Rong's house? This master fortune teller was Xiao Jin. Even if it wasn't, she actually knew this sentence. This showed how scary she was. It scared Master Yao Zhu so much that he quickly apologized. It was possible that the person who saved him at Su Rong's house was also Xiao Jin. Wasn't he courting death by rushing to his savior? Yuan Wan was extremely regretful now. Could it be that she recommended Su Rong to Xiao Jin, and Xiao Jin went over to settle this matter? But she remembered that Xiao Jin lived there. So who was Xiao Jin? Yuan Wan then realized that she didn't know who this girl was. She found someone to investigate this girl's information, but there were no leads. Following her Weibo post, not only her fans, but her peers as well. A real master? He's a real master? You admit defeat? This isn't like you. What happened? Didn't you say you were going to deal with offline matters? Why did you suddenly yes? Yuan Wan replied one by one with a straight face. Don't ask. If you ask, it's a super awesome master. If you want to get your fortune told, hurry up and go. 1,000 yuan is a drop in the bucket. Of course, it wasn't that she didn't suffer any losses. Some fans were skeptical, and some felt that 1,000 yuan was too expensive. They thought that Yuan Wan was collaborating with the other party to make her reveal the truth. They wondered if something had happened to make Yuan Wan admit defeat. Yuan Wan didn't dare to say that Su Rong's was too scary. It was beyond her understanding. This bunch of ignorant people. Wasn't it good to be an ordinary person? It was just a Weibo post. There were no new fans, and she even lost some fans. Yuan Wan didn't feel that it was a loss. She had undoubtedly come into contact with the other side of the world and was even saved by someone. Her knowledge had been broadened, and she knew that there was always someone better out there. One had to keep a low profile. Acting cool would get you struck by lightning sooner or later. Chapter 295. However, Yuan Wan's situation was not without benefits. Just as Xiao Jin had predicted, she was on fire. This fire was small, but as more and more people came to her for fortune-telling, those who got their fortune told would definitely recommend her to others. In just a few days, Xiao Jin's fans had increased to 100,000. Everyone on Weibo was saying that the master was like a god. The anti-fans had been taught a lesson beforehand and spoke in a sarcastic manner, but they did not dare to say anything. If they questioned her, a large group of fans would surround and attack her to protect her dignity. After she became famous, she did not need any more explanation. Of course, because fortune-telling was expensive, only a small number of people could afford it. Moreover, she only accepted things that she really wanted to know. Things like winning the lottery or when she would become rich, she rejected them immediately. Furthermore, there were murderers who came to her for fortune-telling and asked if she could escape the punishment of the law. Between her reputation and a friendly society, Xiao Jin chose the latter. She called the police and got the police to punish the culprit. The culprit was then locked up. Even if he wanted to scold Xiao Jin, he did not have the chance. Of course, with her accurate fortune-telling, it was impossible not to attract attention. In a few days, she was targeted by the spirit group. If there was trouble in real life, there would definitely be trouble online. There were many people like this who would show off on the internet once they had the ability. However, Xiao Jin was a genuine fortune-teller. She had investigated those who had gone through fortune-telling before. Although it was a trivial matter, she had basically achieved a 100% accuracy rate after testing. The spirit group instantly concluded that the other party must have a prophetic ability. However, when it came to finding information, there were all kinds of problems and situations. In short, they could not find any information about Xiao Jin's identity. This instantly made the spirit group feel that something was wrong. When Hua Yiming and Chao Yikai saw the members of the spirit group complaining in the group, they suddenly felt a familiar aura. When they were investigating Xiao Jin, there was also a problem. In the end, they only found information about Xiao Jin from real life. The exploded computer was still in the warehouse, witnessing history. They had also read about this famous master online. Was he really that awesome? Of course, it wasn't up to them to decide whether he was awesome or not. Those who had done fortune-telling had already confirmed it. Later on, there were too many fortune-tellers, so Xiao Jin set a limit to only receive 10 customers a day. This made the fans even more dumbfounded. If she wanted to earn money, she could only earn 10,000 yuan a day at most. The key was that her calculations were super accurate and no one could doubt her. Setting a quota limit was too much. The first 10 people to place their orders every day would get their fortunes told, while the rest would have to wait until the next day. The highest number of orders was the normal 1,000 yuan. Other price packages were too expensive, so no one ordered them for the time being. Xiaojin didn't care about these things. It was the last few days before the summer vacation. She went to school and did some fortune-telling. There was nothing else to do. Everything seemed to exude a peaceful aura. The Feng family's side was still causing trouble. Who knew how long they could endure? When the final exam came, Xiaojin took the exam in school and took a plane to another city. Her sudden departure was hidden from everyone. The spirit group monitoring her dropped the chain again. No one knew that she went to another city. She simply called home and said that she would be back the next day. She was just taking a break before the summer vacation. Xiao Fei thought about her character of doing what she said and became even more worried. Why was she still in her rebellious period? Chapter 296. This was just a small city. It was the place where Su Rong was born. She grew up here and had many painful memories, but also many beautiful memories. When she arrived in this city, she found a remote place and set up a formation. The light and shadow in front of her became chaotic, as if there was a space-time turbulence. All the scenery began to distort. After a few seconds, everything returned to normal. However, the scenery in front of her was completely different from where she was just standing. She was standing on an asphalt road, surrounded by a dense forest. In front of her was a wide river. Sunlight poured down, illuminating the river and making it sparkle. Su Rong and Ming Chu snuggled up to each other and sat on the riverbank. Xiaojin stood behind them, quietly watching this scene. She was holding the umbrella that Su Rong gave her. There was no one around, and everything was very quiet. There were only the sounds of unknown insects and the occasional bird call. Su Rong leaned on Ming Chu's shoulder, and both of them had a faint smile on their faces. Su Rong whispered to Ming Chu, "Ming Chu, do you know? My home is on the other side of this river. Although it's very remote and very poor, I spent a very happy time here when I was young." Ming Chu said gently, "I know, Rong Rong." Su Rong looked at the setting sun and couldn't help but sigh. "Look, the scenery here is so beautiful. Even when the sun sets, it's still so beautiful. To be able to see such beautiful scenery and meet you in this world is really the happiest thing for me." Ming Chu nodded gently. "Me too." Su Rong's face bloomed with a bright smile. The setting sun fell on her ordinary face, but at this moment, she seemed to be stunningly beautiful. She looked at the other side of the river, and tears fell drop by drop, but her expression was always happy. "Ming Chu, we will meet again in the next life, right?" Ming Chu, "Yes, we will meet again." Su Rong, "I just want to be able to be with you for the first time in the next life, even if I don't have any memories. Even if we don't meet again, I am already very happy to be with you in this life. No one will be happier than me, I know." The sun seemed to be setting, and Su Rong felt the power in her body disappearing bit by bit. The river surged endlessly, and every drop of water seemed to never tire. They ran forward, and there was always an end. Her voice gradually weakened. "Ming Chu, I love you. How I wish that I could have met you earlier, from the moment I was born." She held Ming Chu's hand tightly. Ming Chu looked at the setting sun, still as calm as ever, until the woman fell weakly on his shoulder. At that moment, Xiaojin felt a special vibration. She saw Su Rong and Ming Chu's bodies gradually dissipating. The orange sunset gradually disappeared into the horizon. Darkness was about to descend. Their bodies turned into transparent energy, like countless flashing butterflies, flapping their wings and rushing toward Xiaojin. She opened the umbrella, and countless fluttering butterflies emitted a moving radiance in the dark sky. They only circled in the sky for a moment before surging toward the umbrella. Finally, they surged into the umbrella. At that moment, even the flying cranes in the umbrella seemed to come alive. They seemed to be fluctuating, but after a moment, they returned to calmness. The girl closed the umbrella and said softly in their direction, "Thank you." Chapter 297. Xiao Jin used an array to set up a monument by the river. Su Rong and Ming Chu's names were engraved on the monument. She stayed in the city for a night and returned to the capital the next day. However, she received a phone call. It was from the property manager of the old house where Su Rong lived. He said that Su Rong had left something for Xiao Jin. She went over to take the thing. It was a notarized will. Su Rong left her house to Xiao Jin. She didn't choose Ming Chu's parents. Xiao Jin was actually a little puzzled. She had never helped Su Rong, but Su Rong had made a huge contribution to her. If she wanted to calculate karma, perhaps she owed Su Rong something that was difficult to repay. The pure spiritual reader that only existed in legends had taken the initiative to leave the spiritual seed to her. Now, she even left her a house. This was not something that the demonized spiritual seed could compare to. She could even use this to begin to offset the backlash on her body. However, it was not worth it. This kind of faint emotion only lasted for a moment. She held the house and felt a little funny for a moment. She didn't have much use for the house, but it was left by Su Rong. She could sell her own house and only keep Su Rong's house. She didn't intend to touch anything in it. She took this thing home and was bumped into by Xiao Fei. "Why did you go to Lu City yesterday? Girls are running around alone now. You don't even tell your mother." She noticed the thing in Xiao Jin's hand and was a little curious. "What are you holding?" Xiao Jin pursed her lips. "The house I bought. Someone passed away downstairs. They left the house to me." Xiao Fei. She was shocked. They passed away. How could they leave the house to you?" "Oh my God, Jin. You didn't move there for someone else's inheritance, did you?" Xiao Jin. She felt funny. "You think too much. It's just because of an accident." She tilted her head and thought for a moment. "Then let's keep the house. It's not good to sell it to others. I don't plan to touch the things inside." Xiao Fei was still in a daze. She had no idea how Xiao Jin could bring back a house in just half a month. Xiao Jin said casually, "Why don't you sell my house? I will return the money to Zhenming. I raised the price when I sold it. You bought new appliances." Xiao Fei. What kind of business genius was this? Not only did he not spend any money, but he also got a property for free. Although it was located in a remote area, it was still worth a few million. No, who was the one who passed away? Xiao Jin couldn't do something he shouldn't do. Xiao Fei hurriedly pulled Xiao Jin to ask. Unfortunately, Xiao Jin didn't want to answer. He simply explained that a friend had passed away and left it to her. She wasn't going to make up any excuses. Su Rong and Ming Chu died naturally. The excuse of suicide was too casual. She also told He Yao that Su Rong had passed away. Ming Chu had disappeared too. He Yao didn't ask anything. She vaguely knew that since Xiao Jin didn't say anything, there must be something else. However, they had to give an explanation to the shocked Ming family. They could only make up an excuse that the two of them had committed suicide. The two elders of the Ming family didn't have much of a reaction, even if their son was dead. As early as when Ming Chu insisted on marrying Su Rong, their hearts had already faded. However, He Yao told Xiao Jin that Ming Chu's family asked about the old house left by Su Rong's parents. Chapter 298. She saw from the file that the house was transferred to Xiao Jin. Xiao Jin was not the kind of person who would do this for the house. There must be something else. Xiao Jin did not intend to touch Su Rong's house, but he was not so kind. His son and daughter-in-law committed suicide, but the first thing he cared about was the house. Only she knew the truth about the suicide. To others, it was suicide. No wonder Su Rong chose to die. To her, her husband's parents were just strangers. All the warmth she received in the world came from Ming Chu, because Ming Chu understood the beauty of the world. She could not live anymore when they were gone. Xiao Jin did not care if they knew about the house. Even if they knew, the house had been given to him. They could not do anything about it. Even if they wanted to make trouble, Xiao Jin knew that He Yao would never let them do it in front of her. As long as Xiao Jin did not say anything. After dealing with this matter, Xiao Jin prepared for the trip abroad. Because they would gather at the airport, Xiao Fei helped Xiao Jin prepare all the luggage the night before they left. The school helped them with the visa when they registered. Xiao Fei was very worried about Xiao Jin's first trip abroad. "You must follow your two brothers when you go abroad," Xiao Fei reminded her worriedly. Just follow the school and your brother. Don't get lost. After all, this is not China. You are not familiar with the place. What if you get lost and don't know how to report it to the police? Xiao Jin was a little amused. Fei Fei, do you think I am a child? Xiao Fei smiled a little embarrassedly. Of course I know you are not a child. But going abroad is different. Mom is just worried. Xiao Jin, don't worry. I will come back safely. Do you have anything you like? I will bring it back for you from abroad. Xiao Fei, no, it is so convenient now. Mom can ask someone to bring her anything she likes. You can have fun. After all, it was Xiao Jin's first time going abroad. Xiao Fei definitely wanted her to have a good time. She simply packed a few sets of clothes. Everything else was arranged by the school, so she didn't have to worry too much. However, Xiao Fei was still worried about Xiao Jin, so he talked about it with Mu Jinming at night. Mu Jinming said, he has to go abroad to broaden his horizons. When the child grows up, there will be schools to look after him. You don't have to worry so much. Qi Ji is also abroad. When the time comes, I will ask him to look after Xiao Jin. Xiao Fei sighed. Xiao Jin is a girl after all. Mu Jinming, I think she's more independent than you think. Xiao Fei suddenly said sadly, in my heart, she will always be a child. Mu Jinming, all right, this matter can't be explained clearly. Early the next morning, Xiao Jin woke up and took a car to the airport with Muzichu and his brother. It wasn't their first time going abroad. Although they weren't interested in this activity, it was still a little refreshing to accompany Xiao Jin. In the car, Muzillian even teased Xiao Jin, it's your first time going abroad. You don't know what it's like abroad, right? Don't run around. Xiao Jin used to stay in a small place in Hui City. This was her first time going abroad. He was probably afraid that she would make a fool of herself. Xiao Jin only pursed her lips and smiled faintly. She still had the umbrella in her hand. Other than holding the umbrella, she didn't even carry her bag. This naturally attracted Muzillian's attention. Why did you bring an umbrella? If it rains, you can buy one overseas. Chapter 299. The design of the umbrella was simple, but it looked beautiful. Muzillian only thought that she had bought it somewhere as a souvenir. Xiao Jin, I like it. Muzillian, that was weird. Muzichu also said coldly, Muzillian, you don't have to say so much. Muzillian felt like he was being targeted. No, I was just saying. Besides, it's very strange for her to take an umbrella overseas, okay? She could have put it in her suitcase, but she had to bring it with her. Muzichu, you can pretend that you didn't see it. Muzillian, fuck. He was too talkative. Then, they met up with the rest of the group at the airport. There were many people from the school going this time, but it was impossible for the same flight to be so coincidental, so they set off in batches. Xiao Jin happened to be in the same group as the Zhong siblings. There were about 10 people in their group. Other than these few, the rest were ordinary students. Ordinary here, of course, referred to those with average family backgrounds and good grades. For this event, they couldn't be missed. Xiao Jin and the rest were all famous people in the event group, so naturally, they were the center of attention. This group of students was especially curious about why these people were here. They were clearly a group of rich young masters and young ladies who didn't lack money. Some people even complained secretly. If it weren't for them, my friend wouldn't be unable to come. Seriously, they are so rich, but they still snatch other people's places to go overseas. Can't they afford to go overseas? So stingy. Yes, we originally agreed to go shopping on Celebrity Avenue, but because of them, my friend can't come. Have you forgotten that this event is based on the ranking of results? In other words, if your results weren't as good as others, you couldn't blame others. Not all college students of this era had normal values. Xiao Jin heard those whispers, but she didn't think much of it. She glanced at a girl in ordinary clothes. That girl was wearing a pure white cotton shirt and jeans. Judging from the color and style, it was a little old, probably washed too many times. From this, it could be seen that the other party's economic conditions were ordinary, because even her figure exuded a sense of inferiority and extreme lack of confidence. She was surrounded by several boys and girls. They were the group of people who had complained earlier. When their eyes swept over her, there was a faint sense of dominance. She hugged her backpack and tightened her body. It was a defensive and nervous posture. She was fearful of her surroundings. Xiao Jin retracted her gaze. Mizuchu had already helped her change her boarding pass and pushed her suitcase to line up for check-in. Because the tickets were bought by the school, they were all in economy class this time. This was a brand new experience for the two young masters. Zhongli Shiyu and Zhongli Peining were also queuing up. Zhongli Peining was honest, but Zhongli Shiyu was a little impatient. Why can't we buy first class? The pampered young master had never experienced the taste of economy class before. Zhongli Peining comfortingly pulled her brother's wrist. It's okay. It's just a dozen hours. It'll be over soon. She could suffer losses, but her brother couldn't. Zhongli Shiyu glanced at Xiao Jin. If it weren't for following Xiao Jin, they wouldn't have realized that the school was buying economy class when they signed up. If they had known earlier, they would have bought first class separately. Chapter 300. Zhongli Shiyu complained, and Muzillian also complained. Why can't we buy first-class tickets alone? Mizuchu, isn't it good to get along with everyone? Don't make it special. It will be very difficult for your school. Xiaojin, Chi-Chu is right. The school will do whatever it wants. How can we make it special? Qilian, you are really insensible. Muzillian, big sister, if it weren't for you, they wouldn't be here at all, okay? Muzillian looked at Xiao Jin with a bit of a breakdown. You haven't said why you signed up for the activity. I haven't asked you yet, but you are blaming me. Xiao Jin looked at him strangely. I didn't ask you to come with me. Why don't you go back now? Anyway, it's not time yet. You can choose not to go. Muzillian. He wanted to do so, but if he turned back now, his brother, this beast, would definitely complain. If his parents knew that he didn't accompany Xiao Jin abroad, he would die very elegantly. He could only glare at Xiao Jin hatefully. Troublemaker. After checking in the luggage, Xiao Jin only brought the umbrella in his hand. Mizuchu turned his head and asked him, Do you want to check in the umbrella too? Xiao Jin shook his head. Mizuchu didn't force him. Muzillian spoke again. It's a hindrance to take an umbrella. He still said that he wasn't a troublemaker. Xiao Jin didn't say a word. People came and went at the airport. Many people were stunned when they saw Xiao Jin. Muzillian and Mizuchu didn't look bad either. There was even a lot of bold girls who came up to the two brothers and directly asked for their WeChat and phone numbers. Of course, Mizuchu wouldn't give it to them. On the contrary, Muzillian, this playboy, gave a few numbers. When the girl left, he even blew a kiss to others. Mizuchu said coldly, Those who do too many bad things will eventually suffer retribution. Muzillian. What are you talking about? Isn't it normal for girls to ask for my phone number? How can I watch a beauty leave so sadly? Do you think I'm you? What a cold-blooded, heartless bachelor. Due to their different personalities, Mizuchu had never been in a relationship. Mizuchu only sneered. Some of the two of them asked for a phone number, and Zhongli Shiyu also had one. On the other hand, no boy dared to come forward and ask for a phone number as beautiful as Xiao Jin. It was probably because he saw Muzillian and Mizuchu surrounding her. When the students at the back of the queue saw this, someone started complaining again. So what if you're handsome? It was indeed amazing to be handsome. Her grades were good, and she was rich. Who wouldn't take a few more glances at her? After everything was done, they went through the security check together. This time, there were two school teachers leading the team, and one of them was even a director. The activities abroad were to participate in cultural activities and travel, meet the students and teachers of foreign famous schools, listen to the lessons of foreign famous teachers, and have a meal together. It was also equivalent to an additional activity. It was prepared for the students with good grades, who knew that Xiao Jin and the others would sign up this time. Because they came on time, they didn't have to wait long before they heard the announcement of boarding. The three of them didn't sit together. When the school bought the tickets, it wasn't so coincidental. Other than a few people who could sit nearby, the others were separated. Zhongli Shiyu became the closest to Xiao Jin. Xiao Jin sat in the second of the 4 seats in the middle. Zhongli Shiyu sat in the 3 seats on her right. Mizuchu's first reaction was to find the passenger next to Xiao Jin to change seats. Chapter 301. The passenger next to Xiao Jin was a man with a big belly and a big waist. He looked to be in his 30s. He was dressed in gold and silver and looked a little fierce. When he saw Xiao Jin sitting next to him, his eyes lit up. Mizuchu came forward and asked him politely, "Hello, brother. My sister and I are together, but our tickets are different. Can we change seats?" As long as the guest agreed, the seats in the economy class could be changed. However, the man didn't appreciate it. "Why should we change? I'm used to this seat." Musilian couldn't help but complain. "What's so good about the edge seats? Do you like the aisle?" The man immediately revealed a fierce expression. "What does it have to do with you? If you're so arrogant, why don't you take first class?" Before Musilian could curse, he was stopped by Mizuchu. On Xiao Jin's left was a woman carrying a child. She looked at them and was a little surprised, but she didn't dare to cause trouble. The child was sleeping. Mizuchu and the others walked to their seats and asked if they could change seats. However, the young man sitting next to them was a little scared when he saw the big man and subconsciously shook his head and refused. Xiao Jin sat in her seat with a calm expression. It was just that the economy class was narrow. The model of this plane was relatively old, unlike many large international flights. They could only say that they were unlucky. The seat wasn't that big. When the man sat down, his body was already big and muscular. When he leaned to the side, it was as if he was leaning against Xiao Jin's armrest, taking up all of her space. Now that they were close, she could even smell the disgusting, oily smell of the man. It was really oily. How many days had it been since he washed his hair? Xiao Jin frowned. She couldn't lean to the side. Next to her was a woman carrying a child. It would be easy to squeeze others. Mizuchu also noticed Xiao Jin's predicament, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Just then, a timid voice came from behind Xiao Jin. "Xiao Jin, do you want to switch seats with me? I'm by the window." Xiao Jin turned around and saw that it was the girl who was dressed in ordinary clothes and had low self-esteem. She looked at Xiao Jin with some hesitation. Xiao Jin shook his head and smiled. "It's okay. I'll sit here. You can go sit." The girl hesitantly glanced at the man next to him and could only return to her seat. "I told you to pretend to be a good person. Duan Ruyan, why are you so shameless?" When she passed by the seats of her classmates, a male classmate gave her a disgusted look. Her body trembled, and the male classmate reached out to grab her arm and said in a low voice, "Don't get close to people you can't afford to offend." Duan Ruyan's body trembled even faster. When the other passengers looked at him strangely, the boy did not dare to cause trouble and quickly let go of her. Duan Ruyan returned to her seat as if she was escaping. Fortunately, when the teacher came up, he noticed Xiao Jin's predicament. Mizuchu also whispered something to the teacher. The male teacher walked over and switched seats with Xiao Jin. Xiao Jin agreed this time. The fierce-looking man saw this scene and did not know what to say. He could only watch as Xiao Jin left from the other side with a regretful expression. It was rare to see such a beautiful and classy girl. What a pity. Bastard who ruined his plans. He glared fiercely at the male teacher. Chapter 302. Xiao Jin swapped seats, and the male teacher happened to sit in front of Duan Ruyan. When she saw Xiao Jin coming over, Duan Ruyan was a little surprised. The stewardess and stewardess came over to greet all the passengers. When they noticed Xiao Jin, they were a little surprised, and their smiles became even more charming. The plane began to take off. Two young girls were sitting next to Xiao Jin. Although they were surprised by Xiao Jin's beauty, they were too embarrassed to talk. After the plane began to take off, they took out their tablets to watch TV. They wore headphones and had their own entertainment. The flight time of more than 10 hours was boring. Musilian and Mizuchu were already prepared for this. They asked Xiao Jin to download some TV dramas and watch them by herself so that she would not be too bored. Sometimes, she would feel Duan Ruyan's gaze, but before that, they did not know each other. After an unknown period of time, the child suddenly cried. Then came the sound of the woman coaxing the child awkwardly. Actually, the child stopped crying after a few cries. Xiao Jin noticed that the child was the child of the woman who had been sitting next to her. However, before the child could cry, a fierce voice rang out, "Crying? crying, crying, crying. Where's your mother? Isn't it annoying to cry? Why did you bring the little boy on the plane if you wanted to cry? Aren't you embarrassed to disturb others' sleep? Fuck. His words were louder than the child's cries. It was so loud that half of the passengers who were gradually falling asleep on the plane woke up. The stewardess heard the noise and hurried over. The child actually stopped crying, but he was frightened by this sentence again and began to cry. Then, there was the woman's awkward apology and coaxing voice. There was another earth-shattering scolding. A passenger complained. The child didn't cry much. He only cried twice. You're shouting louder than him. You're disturbing others' sleep. The fierce-looking man immediately scolded. What does it have to do with you? Son of a bitch. His filthy mouth immediately scared the passenger who was speaking, and he didn't dare to open his mouth again. Of course, the stewardess quickly advised them that nothing could happen on the plane. Otherwise, they would have to make an emergency landing. The troublemakers would also be detained. Probably thinking of this, the man didn't dare to do anything. After cursing a few times, he unbuckled his seatbelt and prepared to go to the bathroom. The bathroom was at the back, and he had to walk past Xiao Jin when he walked through the corridor. When he saw Xiao Jin, his eyes lit up. When he walked over, he pretended to be unsteady, and his huge body fell on Xiao Jin. If he fell down, his waist would hit Xiao Jin's face. That scene could not be described as just disgusting. However, just as he was about to fall, he suddenly felt an inexplicably powerful force pushing him from behind. He staggered a few steps, as if he really did lose his footing, and directly fell down, landing on the corridor. Boom. If it wasn't for the fat on his back, he probably would have fallen hard. This gave the stewardess a huge fright. The passengers were dumbfounded at first, then some of them couldn't help but smile. Serves you right. The man stood up in shock and anger. Which one of you pushed me? However, when he looked back, the corridor he walked through was empty. The passengers on both sides were sitting just right. The stewardess came from the other side. It was impossible for anyone to stand up and push him so quickly. He was nearly 200 pounds. It was not easy to push him. He was shocked and angry when he couldn't find the culprit. On the way back, everyone looked like the culprit. He looked even fiercer. He didn't suspect the people around Xiao Jin. After all, they were all in his sight. Who could push him? Chapter 303. The 10-hour-long flight was quite fast. There was no trouble in the second half of the flight, so she had a good night's sleep. When she got off the plane, it was drizzling in America. The moist air entered her nose. The air in this foreign country was no different from the air in China. She took the umbrella and got off the plane. Muzillion and Muzichu followed her. Muzillion looked at the man in the distance. He saw that the man was staring at Xiao Jin. His lecherous eyes were exposed. Muzillion scolded fiercely, "If you look at me again, I'll dig your eyeballs out." He couldn't hold it in on the plane. Now that he got off the plane, he had nothing to worry about. Of course, he scolded him. The man glared at Muzillion. He seemed like he wanted to scold him back. However, when he saw Muzichu and the others standing together, he was scared and could only leave. Muzillion spat. What a disgusting thing. Brother, let me tell you. Next time, no matter what, you must take the first-class cabin. Not everyone was like that, but it was still disgusting to meet such a weirdo. Muzichu didn't object this time. Xiao Jin looked at the man's back as he left, and only smiled. The male teacher announced for them to gather. It was daytime when they arrived here. However, they had been on the plane for more than 10 hours. What they needed now was rest. The hotel had been booked. They just needed to go to the hotel. The bus was already waiting outside. The school had arranged everything very well. They went to collect their luggage and got on the bus. The bus was very empty. Muzillion and Muzichu sat together. Xiao Jin sat in front of them. No one dared to sit beside Xiao Jin. Someone whispered, "Why is she always holding that umbrella?" "I don't know. She likes it. Maybe there's something wrong with her." Really, they spoke very softly, not daring to let Xiao Jin and Muzichu hear them. Xiao Jin heard it, but she did not respond. He just looked at the light rain outside the window. Duan Ruyan's gaze lingered on Xiao Jin. This timid girl was sitting in the corner. They looked at Xiao Jin with envy and hope. What a luminous being she was in the light. When they arrived at the hotel, Musilian couldn't hold it in anymore. He often came overseas to play. Coincidentally, Mu Chiji was also working in a company in the US. Moreover, they were in the same city. Musilian directly told the teacher that they would bring their sister to look for Big Brother, and the teacher agreed. But when he told Xiao Jin about it, Xiao Jin didn't agree. She said lightly, "I'm not in a hurry to see Chiji. I want to rest first." Musilian's eyes widened. "Didn't you sleep for more than 10 hours on the plane?" He had noticed that Xiao Jin didn't wake up much the entire time. To be able to sleep for more than 10 hours in such an environment, Xiao Jin was really impressive. Xiao Jin said, "I'm just very tired. I want to rest." Since she said so, Musilian naturally couldn't force her. However, he didn't like to stay in the hotel. Moreover, the room was too small. He asked the front desk to change to a bigger room. The teachers turned a blind eye and couldn't be bothered. As long as she was there, it was fine. Xiao Jin didn't change. Musichu saw that Xiao Jin didn't go over and hesitated for a moment. After confirming that Xiao Jin would stay in the hotel and not go anywhere, he went to look for Mu Chiji with Musilian. Chapter 304. The hotel room had 2 single beds for 2 people. She was assigned to the same room as Duan Ruyan. Duan Ruyan was a little excited when she heard the teacher let her stay in the same room as Xiao Jin, but the other students were in disbelief. One of them even blurted out, "Teacher, isn't this inappropriate?" Before the teacher could speak, Xiao Jin said coldly, "I think it's appropriate." No one dared to say anything when she spoke. Although Xiao Jin's matter had caused a stir in the school, everyone now knew that she was Musilian's sister. In other words, she was the daughter of the Mu family. They did not dare to provoke her. Zhongli Shiyu and Zhongli Peining also separated. However, they were also rich and willful. They went to the hotel and changed to a high-end suite. They did not want to stay in the same room as other students. When they returned to the room, Duan Ruyan pushed her suitcase in. When she saw Xiao Jin, she could not help but feel ashamed. She said softly, "Xiao Jin, if you need any help, just let me know." "Let me know?" Xiao Jin seemed to be surprised by this word. He turned to look at her and said, "What do I need to tell you? Shouldn't you be helping me?" Duan Ruyan's face stiffened. She said that because she was used to it. She was ordered around by those people. Every time they wanted her to do something, they just ordered her to do it. The help that Xiao Jin said did not exist. However, she was too embarrassed to say it. This had nothing to do with Xiao Jin. She could only hide her grievances in the bottom of her heart. No one else needed to know. Xiao Jin retracted his gaze and said, "I don't need your help. Student Duan, is this your first time in the United States?" Duan Ruyan nodded embarrassedly and said, "Yes, this was her first time going abroad. She studied hard and finally got the chance to go to school. Fortunately, she applied for it. Unlike most of the other students, she did not have an excellent family background. She could only rely on her own efforts. Other than this, she did not have any other merits worth mentioning." Duan Ruyan put down her suitcase and looked at Xiao Jin carefully. This was the most beautiful girl she had ever seen. The tip of her eyebrows and the corners of her eyes exuded a smoky temperament. She really looked like a fairy who lived in the heavenly palace. Even talking to him felt like blasphemy. Wasn't this blasphemy? For someone like her, it was a great honor to be able to speak with Xiao Mu. Xiao Jin stayed in the room for a while. Then, he took out the tablet and looked at it. Duan Ruyan thought that Xiao Jin was studying, so she didn't dare to make a sound when she was busy. She was afraid that she would disturb Xiao Jin. In fact, Xiao Jin was looking for local tourism information in America to gain some knowledge. She basically had no pressure when it came to language. At this moment, Xiao Jin noticed that Duan Ruyan had taken out her old smartphone. Her face stiffened for a moment as if she had seen something. When she subconsciously raised her head to look at Xiao Jin had already retracted his gaze. "Student Xiao, I'm going out for a while," Duan Ruyan whispered to Xiao Jin. Xiao Jin nodded, and Duan Ruyan tiptoed out of the room. After she left, Xiao Jin put down the tablet and followed her out. When she went out, she tilted her head and glanced at the wall. A devil's face appeared on the wall. It looked at her and was still as ferocious as ever. Chapter 305. When Duan Ruyan arrived downstairs, there were already 3 men and a woman waiting in the hotel lobby. The woman had an average height and a medium figure. Her skin was fair, and she was wearing exquisite makeup. The other 3 men each had their own characteristics, but they were not very eye-catching in the team led by Musilian and Musichu. One of the men had been in contact with Duan Ruyan on the plane. When the woman saw Duan Ruyan, who was late, she waited until Duan Ruyan came closer before she scolded in a low voice, "We've been waiting for you for so long. What were you doing upstairs? Do you really think you're a phoenix just because you're in the same room as the Mu family? A chicken is a chicken. Do you really think you can fly to the top? She only thinks highly of you because she thinks you're above everyone else. Do you really think that someone like her would take a fancy to you?" A series of harsh words pierced Duan Ruyan's heart, but she just blinked and replied timidly, "I was waiting for the elevator for a long time." "I'm sorry, Miss Yao." Yao Hongyin glared at her bitterly. Although she was scolding her, she secretly hated that she had not been assigned to the same room as Qiao Jin. Otherwise, she would have been the one living with Qiao Jin. If she had a good relationship with them, she would not have to worry about not being able to enter the Mu brothers' social circle. After a long time, everyone knew the relationship between the Musilian brothers and Qiao Jin. Of course, judging from their attitude, even if Qiao Jin was not the biological daughter of the Mu family, she was better than their biological daughter. These people could not tolerate looking down on her. Of course, not everyone in a key university had such qualities and thoughts, but the difference in environment was too big. They were also geniuses who had been admitted to other universities, but their mentality gradually became distorted as they compared with each other. Their families were not poor, but they were well off. They thought they could have a better life, but they did not expect the students here to have such a big family. Some people worked hard, and some people were willing to fall. Duan Ruyan could be said to be from the poorest family, so of course, she became the target of their bullying. When the other boys saw that there were foreigners staring at them, they realized that the cultures of the 2 countries were different. Afraid of causing misunderstandings, they said to Yao Hongyin, "Well, Hongyin, don't waste time with her. It's almost time for our appointment with Peter. Don't be late for the first time and leave a bad impression on him." Yao Hongyin nodded. Okay. When Duan Ruyan heard them talking about Peter, who she had never heard of before, she was confused and scared. "What are you talking about? Where are we going? Have you told the teacher?" "Of course I told the teacher." Yao Hongyin reached out and grabbed Duan Ruyan's arm. She was strong and grabbed Duan Ruyan like she was holding a chick. "It's none of your business where we're going." This time, it was different from the past. They were abroad. If anything happened, Duan Ruyan might not even have time to contact the teacher. She instinctively felt scared and shook her head desperately. "I still have some homework to do. You've already told the teacher that I don't have the teacher's permission. Why don't we just forget about it?" "Of course we've told the teacher that you have to go too." The other 3 men also pushed Duan Ruyan. Duan Ruyan was no match for them, so she could only be half forced out of the hotel lobby. After they left, Qiao Jin's figure slowly appeared behind her. Chapter 306. The summer in the United States was the same as in China. The humid heat wave hit the hotel surroundings. The air conditioner in the hotel was on, so it did not feel so much. Qiao Jin was wearing a white shirt, slender jeans, and a pair of limited white sneakers. She looked fresh and elegant. Her waist-length seaweed hair made people feel that she was a siren from the sea, which attracted the attention of many foreigners. The aesthetics between the 2 countries were not very similar, but looking at Qiao Jin, there was a particularly comfortable beauty and temperament. At least foreigners would not think of her as ugly. She was probably a legendary Oriental beauty. She was indeed extraordinary. Most of her daily clothes were arranged by Qiao Fei. Her aesthetics were good, so she never made a mistake when matching Qiao Jin. Of course, she looked good, and the sack was not easy to make mistakes. She watched Duan Ruyan being pulled away by Yao Hongyin and the others. Her face was full of reluctance. The surrounding walls surged with layers of black air, extending out from the hotel. Except for her, no one else could see such a situation. Zhongli Peining and Zhongli Shiyu were eating delicacies alone in the hotel lobby. When they caught a glimpse of Qiao Jin, they immediately became alert. Their mission was to monitor Xiao Jin. Now that Xiao Jin had made a move, of course, they had to pay special attention. They saw Xiao Jin step out of the hotel alone. The two siblings looked at each other. After leaving a tip, they got up and prepared to follow Xiao Jin. Xiao Jin came out of the hotel and saw a Bentley slowly driving over. It was not surprising to see such a luxurious car in this area. The surprising thing was the person inside. In the car, Adan was in disbelief. "Young master, do you think Miss Chiao won't suspect anything if we deliberately stay in this hotel? What does she need to suspect?" The man in the car had a perfect and intoxicating smile on his face. When he saw the familiar figure outside the hotel, the gentleness in his eyes gradually increased. "She knows that I will come to find her, from the perspective of a friend." Adan was speechless. He suddenly understood what the young master meant. Just like the famous saying of the century, "You are a good person. Right now, you're my friend. So you should have about the same level of destructive power, right?" Yet, young master was actually using this method to slowly conquer her. TSK, how terrifying. Sure enough, Xiao Jin appeared at the entrance of the hotel. Opening the car window, the man seemed to carry a clear chill, dispelling the summer heat wave, bringing a particularly fresh and intoxicating feeling. He saw Xiao Jin standing outside. "It's very hot outside. You can just wait inside." Xiao Jin walked forward. "I didn't purposely wait for you. When I was about to go out, I felt that you were coming." The other, Song Yanqing, was not embarrassed at all. His noble temperament remained unchanged. "It seems that I'm more important. You originally planned to go out, but changed your mind when you heard that I was here." Xiao Jin thought about it and nodded. He wasn't wrong. The other, awesome. She was just a little curious about Duan Ruyan. She had predicted that her life would not be in danger. Since Song Yanqing was here, she must have come to see Song Yanqing. "Why are you here?" She lowered her head and asked. She opened the car door and let Song Yanqing out. In the past, this kind of work was done by Adan. When Adan saw Xiao Jin's behavior, he naturally would not be so ignorant as to say, "I'll do it." If he really did that, perhaps he would not be the chief bodyguard by the young master's side tomorrow. Adan thought sadly. Chapter 307. Song Yanqing stepped out of the car, and his tall and straight body stretched out. In an instant, he was taller than Xiao Jin by a head. His graceful and powerful aura quickly attracted the attention of the pedestrians on the roadside. Everyone looked at this Asian man who suddenly appeared, and even the foreigners had a stunned expression. Beauty was really appreciated by the whole world. If there was a difference, it must be that your degree of beauty was not enough. Song Yanqing slightly lowered his eyes to look at the girl next to him and said, "This time, there is a company activity and signing a contract. My father asked me to deal with it." "You, sir, asked you to deal with it in the country." "Oh." Xiao Jin expressed that he understood. The two siblings, who originally wanted to follow her, hid in the hotel lobby. Looking at the situation outside, it was not good to go out. Zhongli Peining saw Song Yanqing, and her eyes showed incomparable amazement. Is that the young master of the Song family? The other party was tall and straight like a pine tree, and his temperament was even better. Coupled with that peerlessly perfect face, there was really no better adjective to describe him. Zhongli Shiyu's expression was a little strange. Compared to the principle of the same sex repelling each other, he only noticed that the way Song Yanqing and Xiao Jin spoke was actually particularly intimate. Seeing his sister's infatuated look, he immediately warned, "The one beside him is that woman." Not to mention Song Yanqing's identity, just that woman alone was not to be trifled with. Zhongli Peining glanced at her brother and rolled her eyes. "What do you think I'm thinking? Everyone loves beauty. Have you ever seen someone as beautiful as her? Can I take a few more glances?" "Don't worry, I know what I'm capable of. I don't have any thoughts about this kind of immortal level man. He is especially compatible with immortals, so he and Xiao Jin are so compatible." Although Zhongli Shiyu knew that his sister did not have any thoughts that she should not have, hearing her belittle herself like this, he was still a little uncomfortable. "Who said that? You're so beautiful. How do you know you're not worthy of him?" Zhongli Peining asked him meaningfully, "Brother, compared to Xiao Jin, who is prettier?" Zhongli Shiyu answered without hesitation, "You're beautiful." Actually, she couldn't say whether she was beautiful or not. Xiao Jin and Zhongli Peining were totally different. Zhongli Peining was very happy. "Of course I'm happy to hear that. But I know in my heart that it's not that I'm not as good as Xiao Jin, but that Xiao Jin is too rare." She looked at the two people outside and said, "When I first met her, I was already thinking about how popular she would be if she entered the entertainment industry." Zhongli Shiyu. The two of them looked outside the door. At this moment, Xiao Jin and Song Yanqing were already planning to come in. She thought for a moment and said, "The air conditioner is on inside." The air conditioner was turned on because it was too hot. It was just the right temperature for them, but for Song Yanqing, it was too cold. Song Yanqing chuckled. "It's okay. It'll only take a few minutes to enter the room. Ai, go in and help me with the accommodation procedures first." Ai said, "Okay." Although it was said to be the accommodation procedures, it had already been arranged when they came. They only needed to take the room card. The hotel they were staying in was also a 5-star hotel. Its reputation was not too well known, but it was enough for their selection criteria. The hotel manager knew that Song Yanqing had come and planned to personally receive him. Ai went to greet him and did not make a big fuss. Chapter 308. The hotel's air conditioning was indeed very cold for Song Yanqing, but his body had been slowly changing recently. He was no longer as cold as before. A few minutes later, they went upstairs together. Xiao Jin naturally followed him to his suite. Of course, he was just a guest. Zhongli Peining and Zhongli Shiyu naturally wouldn't follow. Seeing this, Zhongli Peining was particularly curious. Are they really boyfriend and girlfriend? Why does the information show that they haven't seen each other many times? Zhongli Shiyu. Ever since the monitoring group lost her tracking record in the WeChat group, I don't believe that the spirit group has investigated any information about her. Zhongli Peining. Upstairs, Song Yanqing asked Xiao Jin, "What were you going to do just now?" Xiao Jin thought for a moment and said, "I saw a particularly interesting person. I just wanted to follow and see what the other party's situation was." Song Yanqing entered the room and continued to ask with slight interest, "An unawakened spiritual reader or a demonized spiritual reader?" Xiao Jin nodded. "It could be. Everything you said is possible." Song Yanqing instantly understood. It could be an unawakened spiritual reader, but it could be a demonized spiritual reader. That would be useful to her, but it wouldn't be enough for her to chase after it. It seems that it's not an ordinary spiritual reader. For you to chase after it abroad, it's either being watched by the Rakshasa world, or it's an array master or a spiritual reader. He guessed correctly. Xiao Jin didn't intend to hide it. There aren't many spiritual readers. He paused and continued. It could be an array master. Duan Ruyan being an array master was just her speculation. Her speculation was wrong before she fully awakened. Just like when she signed up, she felt that something was useful to her. It wasn't until she saw it that she confirmed that this person was Duan Ruyan. However, there was still a group of people who hadn't arrived yet, so she wasn't completely sure. If Duan Ruyan was only one of them, then this event would give her a big surprise. Song Yanqing showed a little curiosity about not being demonized. Is there a chance to be saved when you're not demonized? There was always a process for a person to be demonized. It was not that easy for a spiritual reader to awaken. If he saved her before she was demonized, would it be possible for her to wake up and not be demonized? Xiao Jin shook her head. It's very difficult. Those who can be demonized must have been targeted for a long time. There is also an equivalent exchange. If you want to get the ability, you have to be demonized. Stronger abilities. Basically, no demonized spiritualist can resist this temptation. There was a strong incentive for this. For example, Zhao Chunfeng, who had killed Tan Shuejia and a few others, had been motivated by the desire to avenge his parents. The cracks were already riddled with holes, and the demon had infiltrated silently. Generally speaking, 99% of psionic readers who awakened with a strong desire for revenge were demonized. She thought Duan Ruyan was probably the same. She had been bullied too much. Not to mention that she couldn't save this situation. It wouldn't end well for her to be kind and save others. Even if she could, She had a premonition that Duanruyan would be too late. Because she was an array master, even the demon was chasing after her. This was fundamentally different from Song Yanqing. The demon followed him for a purpose, and he could see the Rakshasa realm. Duanruyan couldn't see it, but she must be gradually coming into contact with the demon. Song Yanqing seemed to be able to understand this situation. He suddenly said to Qiao Jin, "Don't interfere in other people's affairs." Chapter 309. Qiao Jin looked at him curiously. "I didn't say I was going to intervene." Song Yanqing smiled. "I know, there are some things that are useless even if you intervene. If she can be demonized and she isn't strong enough, you can save her once, but not twice." Because he had witnessed the Rakshasa realm, and his ability as a spiritual speaker was forced to awaken by the Rakshasa realm, he knew how powerful the demons of the Rakshasa realm were at seducing people. They would seep into your limbs and bones all the time, just to seduce you. Once they succeeded, they would gradually lose themselves. They might even lose their sanity. Qiao Jin could ignore him back then, so naturally, he wouldn't care about others. Qiao Jin nodded. "I understand." She had existed for 10,000 years and had witnessed countless things like this. Naturally, she wouldn't do something that was thankless. However, there were demonizations in the world, and naturally there were existences like Su Rong and Ming Chu. Thinking of Su Rong and Ming Chu, she felt a little complicated. She said, "I don't think I've told you about Su Rong and Ming Chu." Song Yanqing, "You can tell me now?" Qiao Jin thought for a moment and told him about Su Rong and Ming Chu. She wasn't good at telling stories, so she just told it lightly and casually with a kind of indifference. However, in this story, one could still feel a faint sadness. After Qiao Jin finished, Song Yanqing said, "It's very shocking. It was really surprising that her obsession could be strong enough to bring her deceased husband back." Song Yanqing, "That's why you asked me that question that day. No wonder she was in a bad mood." Song Yanqing was surprised that this kind of thing could make Qiao Jin's mood fluctuate, but he also felt an inexplicable joy. To be able to make her feel touched, it probably made her understand that there were beautiful things in this world. If she stood in a high place and treated everyone the same, she wouldn't be able to feel that kind of beauty. Qiao Jin pinched his chin. "Is Ming Chu everything to Su Rong?" "Sort of," Song Yanqing said. "Although I haven't experienced such a thing, I understand her thoughts. You said that she has no parents, and her life has not been smooth sailing since she was young. This world is only a burden to her. For the sake of living, she can't feel that there are more beautiful things in this world because just trying to survive is squeezing all her time." He explained gently, as if he was unfolding a picture of Su Rong's life. Meeting Ming Chu was the most beautiful thing in her life, because there was someone who had brought her everything and brought her to appreciate the beauty of life. If this person was no longer around, it would be equivalent to destroying her. No one knew whether tomorrow or an accident would come first. This could only be said to be the sorrow of fate. If there were no accidents, perhaps they would live like this for the rest of their lives. Perhaps they would gradually wear each other down and quarrel. Perhaps by then, Su Rong would no longer be so stubborn. However, there were no ifs in life. Everything disappeared at the right time. This was fate. Qiao Jin shook his head and sighed silently. "She gave me an umbrella, and before she left, she gave me a gift. I don't think what I did was worth it. I don't understand her thoughts, but I will cherish them." This was the kindness of the other party, which made her feel different. She had no reason to ignore it. Song Yanqing curled the corners of his lips like a cool breeze and bright moon. "Perhaps this is the reason she wanted you to know. She is a good person." Chapter 310. Qiao Jin nodded. "Just like you." Song Yanqing, "All right, at least in her heart, the meaning of being a good person was not ordinary." When night fell, Qiao Jin saw the Musilian brothers who had returned. Musilian saw her and said, "Big brother is very unhappy that you did not look for him when you came to America. He wants you to video call him tonight and let him see if you have become ugly." This did not sound like something Mu Qiji would say. Obviously, Musilian was bullshitting. Musichu shot a cold look at Musilian and said quickly, "Big brother wants you to call him?" Qiao Jin nodded. I will. Mizuchu asked, are you really not going to change rooms and sleep with others? Are you used to it? It was not that they looked down on the students who shared a room with Xiaojin. It was just that Xiaojin sleeping alone was more comfortable than two people sleeping in the same room. It was not as if they did not have the means to help Xiaojin change rooms. Xiaojin said, it's fine. It's just an activity. I don't want to be special. The Mu brothers who were shot were speechless. Muzillion saw the change in Mizuchu's eyes and immediately shouted, I'm not going to share a room with others. If you want to stay, you can stay by yourself. The room was already booked. There was no reason to change back. Mizuchu took a deep breath and gave up on the idea. It did not matter what his sister thought. He really could not overcome the difficulty of sharing a room with others. Xiaojin did not care about what others thought. She would not force others to agree with her. She went down to eat with them. They ate together. It was all arranged by the school. The teachers were afraid that these students would have their own ideas, so they still advised them to integrate as much as possible. Tonight, a large group of people would arrive, and tomorrow, they would go to school with them to start this study trip. Zhongli Peining and her brother didn't really want to come during dinner time. However, when they thought that Xiaojin would also be there, they still came. Dinner was Western food. The Western food in this hotel was not bad, but it was torture for people who were not used to it. Xiaojin ate quite well. During the meal, Ro Yin and the remaining 4 people finally came back. As expected, they were criticized by the teacher. The short-haired girl who was with Duan Ruyan could not help but smile and apologize. She told the teacher that they had been shopping for too long and lost track of time. Actually, the teacher had called and knew that they might be looking for an excuse. But now that they were back safely, it was fine. Of course, the teacher also noticed that Duan Ruyan's expression was not very good. At least when she returned, her expression was one of terror. The teacher asked with concern, Student Duan, what's wrong with you? They were not from the same school, and this teacher was not Duan Ruyan's teacher. He was just a teacher who led the school. He did not know Duan Ruyan well, and did not know what situation she might have encountered. It was natural for him to be concerned. Yao Hongyin immediately grabbed Duan Ruyan's hand and pinched her arm to stop her from talking nonsense. Yao Hongyin explained with a smile, It's nothing, teacher. We met with a small car accident on our way back. We were almost hit by a car. Duan Ruyan is timid, so she got scared. The other boys behind him also echoed in agreement. They were all college students, so the teacher did not think there was anything wrong. Hearing this, he said with concern, Student Duan, in this case, do you need to rest for a while? I'll ask the hotel staff to send dinner to your room. Chapter 311. Duan Ruyan raised her head and looked at the teacher with a look of hope after the panic. However, the teacher really couldn't see the begging in the depths of her eyes. Teacher, Yao Hongyin held her and no one else could see. She was in pain and her face twitched. Okay, I'll go back to my room to rest. Her voice was like a mosquito. The teacher felt that she was really timid and even spoke carefully. They couldn't be blamed. It was rare to see such a thing on the campus of a key university. As for campus violence, it was difficult for the teacher to think of it. On the other side, Zhongli Peining and Zhongli Shiyu's observation skills were outstanding. Naturally, they saw something fishy. Zhongli Peining pushed her brother's arm. Brother, don't you feel that there's something strange between the two girls? Zhongli Shiyu also saw it, but he couldn't guess the specifics. He just frowned and said, It's a little strange. At this moment, Xiaojin, who was sitting at another table and eating with the Mu brothers, stood up and said softly, Teacher, I'm Duan Ruyan's roommate. I'll send her back to rest. I'm also full. The teacher's face lit up. Oh, right, how could I forget this? Come, Student Xiao, send Student Duan back to rest. Yao Hongyin originally wanted to say that they could send her back so that Duan Ruyan would shut up and not say anything that shouldn't be said. She didn't expect Xiaojin to interfere. Of course, they didn't dare to go against Xiaojin. Xiaojin even walked in front of them and looked down at them. Students, you just came back. You must be hungry. Hurry up and eat. Those who didn't know would think that she was concerned about them, but Muzillion and Mizuchu felt that Xiaojin was it wasn't targeted, but if Xiaojin was concerned about others, he wouldn't be in this state. They didn't understand the situation and could only frown and look over. Of course, those students didn't dare to refuse Xiao Jin's kindness. Okay, okay, okay. Thank you for your concern. Yao Hongyin gritted her teeth. Seeing the disregard in Xiao Jin's eyes, she couldn't help but feel indignant. Wasn't he just lucky enough to be associated with the Mu family? What was there to be proud of? Without the Mu family, he might be picking up garbage to eat. It was said that her results were not very good when she entered the school. No one knew how much money the Mu family had given her. Now that she had suddenly joined a study tour, it was either because the Mu family had bribed her or had helped her hire a famous teacher to tutor her. That was why she had such good results. If they had such resources, wouldn't they be 1,000 times more powerful than Xiao Jin? SK. The few of them went to eat. Xiao Jin sent Duan Ruyan, who was trembling slightly, back home. She was trembling mainly because of Yao Hongyin's pinch. The other party didn't show any mercy. Duan Ruyan's trembling slowed down the moment she climbed onto her shoulder. Xiao Jin supported her as he escorted her back. In a low voice, she said, "Xiao Jin, thank you." His voice was already choked with sobs. She had suffered quite a shock tonight, and even had a nightmare. This nightmare was about to begin, and she didn't know how to face it. She didn't expect Yao Hongyin and the others to be so crazy that they actually sent her to that kind of place. That kind of naked and undisguised gaze, a group of foreigners speaking a strange language. She was like the most embarrassing person in the world. Standing there and letting them size her up, she was just a product. And she couldn't even resist. If it weren't for the teacher's urging, she might not have been able to come back tonight. Chapter 312. When she reached the room, Duan Ruyan sat in front of her bed in shock. Xiao Jin was busy in the bathroom. After a while, she saw a folded warm towel in front of her. Duan Ruyan raised her head because she was too flustered. She saw the girl's calm eyes and delicate facial features. Her temperament was like smoke. She didn't seem to be friendly, but she didn't seem to have any other intentions. Duan Ruyan took the towel and said in a trembling voice, Thank you. Xiao Jin said, "You're welcome." Duan Ruyan wiped her face with the towel. For a moment, she wanted Xiao Jin to save her, because she was the daughter of the Mu family. But why? No one would help others for no reason. She might even hurt Xiao Jin. Perhaps it was because of the first time. Duan Ruyan had seen many people who seemed to have good intentions, but actually had bad intentions. Perhaps Xiao Jin was the same. But there was nothing about her that caught her eye. She knew that this kind of person wouldn't do such a thing. She was not on the same level as Yao Hongyin and the others. Duan Ruyan was very grateful for Xiao Jin's kindness. Duan Ruyan didn't say it in the end. She had to face her own problems. "Are you hungry?" The girl's greeting was still indifferent. Her voice was steady as if there were no fluctuations. Duan Ruyan shook her head. She didn't have any appetite after what happened tonight. Xiao Jin pursed his lips and said, "Rest early. If you're hungry, call the hotel to send food over." Duan Ruyan nodded. When she lay down, she actually felt a moment of relaxation. In a foreign country, a girl she had never met actually brought her a kind of incomparable peace. "Are you really willing to do this? It's too late. Look, if you don't do it now, you'll become even more miserable. You might not even be able to go back alive. Just promise me." It's such a simple thing, Hong. Duan Ruyan opened her eyes, sweating profusely. She was dreaming again. In the dream, she could not see the figures clearly. They were approaching her, and they always wanted her to agree to something. She didn't know what she should agree to. She would have dreams every night, and they would always be able to easily grasp her weakness. Every word they said would make her tremble in fear. The ferocious aura hidden in the darkness seemed to give her a sense of satisfaction. However, she always wakes up. She stared at the ceiling. In the dark environment, her pupils suddenly dilated. She did not move. The sensor light in the room did not light up, but she felt that there was someone beside her. A lively person. It was Xiao Jin. She tilted her head. The curtains blocked the light from the city outside, and the room was extremely dark. Actually, she couldn't see Xiao Jin's figure clearly. She knew that Xiao Jin was sleeping soundly. She had a perfect face, an immortal-like temperament, and an aristocratic family background. She was envious of everything he did. This life was so perfect that there was almost no flaw to be found. Perhaps in this world, there were always some people who were born to be in the clouds. She held her breath. The room was terrifyingly quiet. She did not hear any sound, not even the slightest sound of breathing. Her heart trembled. She wanted to hear more clearly. Suddenly, she heard a voice. "You can't sleep?" It was Xiao Jin's voice. Chapter 313. The stone in her heart finally fell to the ground. Duan Ruyan was a little surprised and said timidly, "Student Xiao, how did you know I was awake? Did I wake you up?" Xiao Jin said, "No, I saw you moving." Duan Ruyan was speechless. She didn't know how Xiao Jin could see it when it was so dark. Perhaps her eyesight was naturally superior. Duan Ruyan was still a little short-sighted. Thinking of this, Duan Ruyan sighed again. How could a perfect person be perfect everywhere? I had a nightmare and just woke up. I'm sorry to disturb you. Xiao Jin didn't say anything. She knew what Duan Ruyan was dreaming about. The aura of the Rakshasa realm's invasion on her body was very serious. It was easy to imagine what her nightmare was about. What was the most disgusting thing about the Rakshasa realm? It was about repeating the past over and over again, forcing you to see this tragic scene, forcing you to remember the unfair treatment you received. Step by step, it aroused hatred, making it impossible for people to escape. In the dream, the person dreaming was not the master, but the people of the Rakshasa realm. This was what Xiao Jin had once seen a demonized spiritualist who had told her. So in the end, there was no way to escape. The hope of recovering after demonization was zero. Basically, one could only become a puppet of the demon. After all, the Rakshasa realm and the real world were not two related worlds. Xiao Jin couldn't control this kind of dream infiltration. After a while, Xiao Jin slowly said, "I didn't wake you up. I just didn't fall asleep. You should go to bed early." Duan Ruyan nodded softly. She was vaguely curious. Why was Xiao Jin still not sleeping in the middle of the night? She didn't know that Xiao Jin didn't need to rest at all. They were in the same room. As long as Duan Ruyan made any strange movements, she would immediately wake up. In the latter half of the night, Duan Ruyan didn't sleep much. Xiao Jin naturally didn't sleep either. However, when they woke up early in the morning, one was energetic and the other was dispirited. There was still a difference. However, there was an event today, and everyone had to wake up early. Duan Ruyan had no choice. Perhaps she was destined to lose focus during today's study tour. The last batch of students arrived 2 hours late because their flight was delayed. When they arrived, it was already late at night, so the teachers did not disturb the students who had arrived earlier. Early in the morning, everyone gathered together happily and became familiar with each other. However, it was obvious that Xiao Jin was separated from the Mu brothers. Similarly, the Zhong siblings were also separated from each other. Naturally, the Mu clan was an influential figure, and no one else could come into contact with them. Zhong Lijia was a new transfer student. He had not even familiarized himself with the school before he followed them to the event. He did not even know many of his classmates. Moreover, they seemed to be either rich or noble. Naturally, they would not strike up a conversation with them. This group of students was also divided into several factions. The professor leading the team excitedly announced today's activities. Today, we will be meeting and exchanging knowledge with students from foreign famous schools. We will have joint activities for 2 days. Everyone can learn and communicate with each other. As for the rest, just treat it as viewing the scenery. We won't be returning to the hotel at night. We'll be staying at the event venue. But we'll be back when the time comes. You don't have to bring too many things. After the professor made the announcement, the group of students cheered. Communicating with students from foreign famous schools was also building a social network. It was beneficial for the future, as long as they had the ability. Of course, those who could come here for this event didn't have to worry about this. Even someone like Duan Ruyan had excellent results. Chapter 314. Xiao Jin didn't find it fun to meet people. Among the large group of students, she looked around and finally determined that Duan Ruyan was her target. because no other students had any special reactions. But she had a vague feeling that something was wrong. She was the most eye-catching in the crowd. Any special behavior would attract attention, so she had always maintained a calm state. With Musilian and Musichu by her side to help her get things, the other female students were quite envious. Musilian and Duanruyan might not have a sister, so they were very conscious of being older brothers. They didn't look at Xiao Jin with disdain like before. Perhaps at that time, she wasn't very good-looking. Xiao Jin thought so. When they went out, Musichu took a sun hat and put it on Xiao Jin. He said concisely, "Sunscreen." Xiao Jin looked at the sun. In fact, the sun didn't hurt her. Instead, it was good for her. The ultraviolet rays that others were afraid of were nothing in their eyes. However, Xiao Jin didn't reject Musichu's kindness. Musilian even went to buy ice cream for Xiao Jin. Of course, in order to show his elegance as the little prince of the campus, he treated everyone in the student group to one, including the teachers. Everyone was flattered. They originally thought that these people were high and mighty, but now, an ice cream had closed the gap. In the past, they thought that they were all rich children, so they weren't to be trifled with. Now, they felt that they were quite approachable. "Take this. You're Xiao Jin's roommate, right? I'll treat you guys." Musilian stuffed an ice cream into Duanruyan's hand. Duanruyan took it in a daze. She didn't expect Musilian to remember her. Although she was Xiao Jin's roommate, it also meant that the other party had a good memory. Of course, if she wasn't Xiao Jin's roommate, perhaps Musilian wouldn't have remembered her. Duanruyan blinked. When the ice cream entered her mouth, it was very sweet. It was really sweet. The sweetness reached the bottom of her heart. She looked at the girl in the distance. She didn't turn back, but she was as beautiful as the sun, radiating light recklessly. Their group soon met up with the students from another famous school. Everyone took 3 buses in batches. Because they were all alternating, the order was messed up, and the teacher arranged it. This way, everyone would know other students at the first stop. Xiao Jin did not separate from the Mu brothers. He sat on a bus and looked at the blonde foreigners around him. In fact, the quality of foreign students was similar to that of domestic students. There were ordinary ones and handsome ones. Everyone seemed to be very enthusiastic. The first person that the foreigners had their eyes on was Xiao Jin. Some even came over to ask for Xiao Jin's phone number and wanted to have a pleasant academic exchange. However, before this step could be carried out, Musichu destroyed it. To him, any man who wanted to get close to his sister was like a pig trying to grab cabbage. Song Yanqing, forget it, except for brother Yanqing. Little did he know that his sister was sending a message to Song Yanqing with her head lowered. "Jin Jinyo, I keep feeling that something is wrong." Xiao Jin rarely sent such an uncertain tone. Song Yanqing quickly replied when he saw the message, even though he was working. "Song Yanqing, what's wrong? Tell me in detail, and I'll help you analyze it." "Jin Jinyo, reality is mixed with falsehood. The other party is typing." After a long time, Song Yanqing sent a message helplessly. "Song Yanqing, I seem to understand the meaning of this sentence, but I don't know the story behind it." Chapter 315. It's Jin Jinyo. I'll reply to you tonight. Song Yanqing, okay. Xiao Jin looked up. Surrounded by foreigners, she suddenly whispered, "Chi Chu, can you check the information of the students this time?" Musichu looked up at her. "No, what do you want to do?" Even if they were from the Mu family, the school was not run by their family. The principal and vice principal's background were even bigger than theirs. It was not realistic to check the students' information. Xiao Jin, then there's no need to ask anymore. Musichu, he frowned slightly. Why do you want to know the students' information for no reason? If you want to know, I can get off the bus and ask them one by one for you. Xiao Jin, that's too troublesome. At most, you'll know who they are. Will they tell you anything else? Musichu, it was not realistic, so he mentioned it casually. With his personality, he could not ask everyone's name with a cold face. Fortunately, Xiao Jin did not agree. Musilian, what are you whispering about? Saying bad things behind my back? Xiao Jin, Musichu. To some extent, Musilian was more like Mu Xiangshan's grandson. Mu Xiangshan, who was far away in China, suddenly sneezed. The bus swayed for a few hours. Along the way, the students chatted from novelty to sleepiness. Not excluding those who chatted passionately, a few hours were not a problem. Musilian and Musichu had already begun to doze off. Only Qiao Jin opened her eyes and looked at the road outside the window, gradually becoming barren. It was not as luxurious as the roads in the city. They were now on a desolate asphalt road, heading towards a small town. Why was the Rakshasa world so active now? She suddenly had this inexplicable thought. In her previous world, the Rakshasa world in her eyes was a world that had nothing to do with the real world. They had their own rules, and the human world had its own rules. And the current Rakshasa realm was abnormally active. Although Duan Ruyan could not see the Luosha realm, she had been entangled by demons. Those who could be entangled by demons were definitely not ordinary people. Was there something special about Duan Ruyan? Formation Master had yet to awaken. Qiao Jin paused. She suddenly thought of a possibility. However, he had to have the opportunity to verify this possibility. It was already past noon when they arrived at the small town. Everyone's stomachs were rumbling with hunger as they woke up one after another. Fortunately, the town was considered luxurious. There were cliffs around the town, and the foreign-style scenery was especially popular among the students. When everyone got out of the car and gathered together, Qiao Jin noticed that there was a spiritualist in the opposing team. Of course, she was not surprised that there was a spirit reader in a foreign country. The Zhong siblings were talking to the foreign student. Obviously, they knew each other. It seemed that the scale of the astral group was rather large. Yep, it was world-class. Once they left the small town, everyone was happy to keep each other company. With the help of the teachers, they found their respective hotels and guest houses. In addition, the small town had internet and surveillance, so the school allowed them to move freely. The foreign students went straight to the bar in the small town. This town was not small. It was a famous tourist town, and there were many tourists. There was a huge fountain in the middle of the town. It was a famous wishing square, and one could come here to make a wish. Qiao Jin did as the Romans did. Under Musichu's lead, she threw a coin into the pool to make a wish. The moment the coin fell into the water, she looked at the small splash and suddenly understood something. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.